Welcome back to the party, everybody. I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of Common Sense. How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome to the party. Quick shout out to the replay gang. Thank you so much for coming back to the party, even though you missed the live party. That's the best part. But do not worry, guys. You will definitely still have fun. Just make sure you are here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. And sometimes whenever I feel like it, so hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, all that good stuff. Before we jump in, let's say thank you to the sponsor of the stream, my6shirt.com. Whatever your persuasion, they've got something for you. And, of course, it is the only place to get your very own, the Indian Jesus official merch. Only at my6shirt.com. All right. Let's party. So I saw this one was from a couple of days ago. Ben Shapiro was on Piers Morgan. So we have our good friend, Ben Shapiro. The last time we talked with Ben, he had Anna Kasparian on his show. And it was a little bit disappointing. Because he didn't really push back. And, the Sunday show, as he calls it, is normally a little bit more low key. And we are very used to seeing Ben Shapiro in the context of like owning the libs or whatever. But we definitely needed to see exactly who he was when he's sitting down with somebody we know he disagrees with. But that's not the goal. The goal was not to dunk on her or anything. The goal was to see what kind of conversation you could have with people who you disagree with. So with this one, he's on the Piers Morgan show. Piers Morgan Uncensored. I don't know how uncensored it is, but they cover a whole range of topics, including Andrew Tate. So without further ado, let's dive right in. If you cannot hear the video, please do let me know.
Well, Ben Shapiro is here, live and uncensored. Well, that's quite an intro we've given you there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
You better live up to it.
I look at that old tape, and suddenly I hit puberty, right?
Well,
they cut out the intro that they gave, but I think that was a pretty good intro for me anyway.
Both look so young.
Oh, my God.
That's probably over 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Right.
10 years ago.
And it was interesting because I was at the time, getting very angry about a series of mass shootings in America with a British sensibility.
And there goes
the my country. We don't really have
monetization.
any guns. And I was, hectoring and lecturing, I guess, Americans about their gun laws. And it went down as badly as that phrase would suggest, particularly with you. But what was interesting was when you came on, I thought, who's this snotty little kid who's going to start trying to take me on? And then it rapidly became clear to me you were a hell of a lot smarter than you appear. So we moved on from then. Anyway, we've had our kiss and makeup interview after that. But I think what was pretty interesting to me, 2016, so 7 years ago now, you tweeted a tweet. This is your pinned tweet to this date. Simply said, facts don't care about your feelings.
Facts don't care about your feelings. That is the biggest thing I think that Ben Shapiro has given to society, is that statement. I'm sure he didn't think of it on his own, but he certainly popularized it. And facts do not care about your feelings. Blake. Struggle streaming already.
And if any phrase, I think, perfectly epitomizes this woke era that we have somehow stumbled into, it's fact. Because the woke brigade put feelings before facts. How do we get there?
Well, culturally speaking, I think that what happened is that the value of subjective authenticity became the core to pretty much everybody. So the idea of individualism was taken to its logical extreme, which was, I'm so important and everything I feel is so important that I can ignore the rest of reality. And in fact, reality is an imposition on me. Institutions, rules, roles, the rules of the road, all that sort of stuff. It's an imposition on who I truly am. And in order for me to be actually free, I have to speak my truth. Now, as I've said and you've said, there's no such thing as my truth, right? There's your opinion and then there's the truth. But as soon as you start speaking in terms of my truth, as soon as you start saying, well, there's how I feel about the world and how I feel about the world is the core of me. What that also does, it means that other people are aggressing on you when they disagree with you.
Exactly. And the idea that my truth is different from the truth, as he just said, creates an impasse where if your truth and somebody else's truth don't align, then now somebody has to coalesce. Somebody has to stand down. Otherwise, you're going to fight.
Because obviously a shared reality means that we can disagree about things out here, but we sort of as human beings are intact. But the moment that you start to identify your truth with the truth, then anybody attacking your truth is attacking you as a human being. And I think that that's where we've gone is this movement away from, we're having a political debate, but again, we can go out and have a drink afterward because we are not the political debate. The political debate's a different thing. To my politics are who I am, or my feelings about who I am, or my feelings about the world. That's the thing that matters more than anything else.
And we see that so much. Most of the time, we talk about it in terms of the social contagion aspect of, the whole LGBT stuff. But it's with everything. You see that people who are into politics make it their entire lives, and everything that they do goes back to this. I was just listening to. I went to Ant-Man today. But on the way, I was listening to one of the Dave Smith podcasts, and he was talking about how the right wing is well, just people in general, when you do take politics as your entire identity, then you're not able to separate yourself from what the state says and what you have as your personal human values, and that is a huge problem that with the left, because all of their values come directly from the government. Now, you guys know I have my issues with the Bible and organized religion and everything, but as I've said every single time I bring that up, I at least care about the values that are espoused in the book. Oh, come on.
What's extraordinary? I mean, I remember this, we're going to come to them later, sadly, but Meghan and Harry, when they went on Oprah Winfrey, and she started talking constantly about my truth, and Oprah was endorsing your truth and everything.
Hey, we got Harley Rose in the building. What is good? Welcome to the party. Glad to see ya. Hope you're doing well.
I was thinking, I'm living in a sort of mad world where truth is no longer factual. It's just whatever you're feeling in any given moment. It seems such a perverse thing for a democratic society that you move away from fact-based, from science, whatever it may be, to just feelings.
And the irony of that is that this is supposed to be the party of science, the science. You're first. You're the first one to say anything. We got some other people here, but they're being quiet, but that's all right. Yeah, the idea that the left was always the party of science and that, took out a lot of criticism on the religious right, that now they're all, everything is about feelings. It's just completely flipped.
Dominating a culture. And if you defy those feelings, you are instantly branded the enemy and you must be destroyed.
Racist.
Well, there's no conversation to be had, right? I can't have a conversation about your feelings. You're feeling your feelings. There's no way for me to dissuade you from.
You can't deny my feelings.
Correct. I can't deny. I can deny.
Hey, we got Trey in the building. Welcome, Trey. Welcome. It says, I slightly disagree about the left getting all this ideology from the government. All right, well, where did they get the idea that the jab was infallible? Not only that it was a good idea, not only that it was right for them, but that if you decided that it wasn't for them, or that, if you decided it wasn't right for you, you're bad. Or if you decide that, if you want to go be a drag queen and do whatever you want, then, that's fine. But I also have to accept it. Where did those ideas come from?
Deny the facts that you bring to the table, but
and you know what? If what you mean by this, Trey, is that it didn't originate from the government, then I will completely agree with you. This is, cultural things. But what I mean is, to clarify a little bit, is that once these cultural movements got big enough, the government took them on, and then from on high said, this is the right thing to think, to say, to feel, so on and so forth. Trey says, oh, okay, never mind. I was thinking more about all the other things and not necessarily the jab. So like what kind of things? What kind of things from the left that we would have issue with? Because about the left getting all this ideology. So what part of their ideology do they not get from the government, or at least blindly follow it? That's kind of what I meant. Maybe I could have phrased that better, but
the problem is once that becomes irrelevant, then we're just at an impasse. There's no more conversation to be had.
How big a problem is it that at the same time, simultaneously, I think, you've had the rise of very populist leaders like Donald Trump, Boris Johnson in the UK, and others who play pretty fast and loose with the truth. That you have people who say, well, hang on, you talk about the sanctity of truth, but you've got these political leaders, US presidents, British prime ministers, where they don't seem to care about the truth. They just bumble through with whatever suits them from day to day. How dangerous is that to the whole shebang?
I mean,
that's incredibly dangerous, but the it's a different conversation, I think, than political discourse among citizens. We've always known that politicians lie. We've always known that they're just doing their job to get the position and so on and so forth. It's when people start believing the lies and repeating the lies when they're believing them. That's the issue.
I think that is dangerous, but it's dangerous in a different way. And it's also dangerous in a more consistent and, I would say, historically precedented way. I mean, the fact is that politicians have always fibbed to us. I mean, there's nothing new about politicians saying things that are not true, from LBJ to George W. Bush to Donald Trump and Barack Obama. I mean, like literally every politician.
And Joe Biden. I mean,
yeah, to President Biden. Right? You see this.
Imagine if that was the rest of the show of them just literally listing politicians for 45 minutes. Well, Joe Biden lied, and George Bush lied, and Obama lied, and Trump lied. I think that'd be funny.
All the time. So the idea of a politician not telling the truth or shading the truth in particular ways, that's not what's new. I think what's new is where people are presented with data and their immediate response isn't, let me bring you some data that rebuts that data, but I don't even have to look at your data because your motivation is bad. This philosophy.
So before he goes on, Harley says there are very few reasons for politicians to actually lie. I'm not sure what you mean by that, because if what I'm understanding you to mean is that if they just actually did good stuff, they would get elected. But the fact is that all of the other politicians lie, and you can't just get by based on merit. So if the analogy I would think of is cycling. Remember when Lance Armstrong got caught for juicing, and it was a huge big scandal. Like, oh my goodness, how could he do this? We bought all the Live Strong bracelets, and I guess now we don't care about cancer anymore. But anyway, they had to go back to that whichever race he was caught in. I mean, they had to go down like 15, 17 people because they tested everybody, and they had to go down like 15, 17 people to find anybody who wasn't juicing. And so the idea that, well, you shouldn't have to, if you're a cyclist, you shouldn't have to juice to win. You should just practice and train harder and so on and so forth, and you'll be the best. But it doesn't work that way, because even if you at peak physical condition and you were blessed with an amazing biology genetically, there's other aspects. In this case, the juice. In the political case, other politicians' lies that are muddying the waters, so that nobody's going to believe you being you're the only honest politician ever. Sure you are. Nobody would believe that. So I think you do we're at a place where you absolutely do have to lie, which is very sad, because again, if what you originally meant was that people could just do better and get votes, that's how I wish it worked. Triz, I think we can handle politicians telling a few lies. It's once they get caught, they'd rather cover it up than admit to it is the real issue. Exactly. I was just watching. It was actually an older clip, but I was just watching one of the exchanges between Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci. It was just it was I think from November. This past November. So it was after we already knew, all of the information that he had given us was wrong, inaccurate, some level of BS. And all he was trying to do, all Rand Paul was trying to do, was to get him to say, look, we messed up. We let this leak out of a lab, which now the CDC is saying is true. Even the NIH, which he works for, he's the head of the NIH, and the NIH stated that the lab theory is at least plausible, but he's like, no, it didn't happen. You're being misleading, and it's just doubling down. And the line that really got me was when Rand Paul asked him if he was going to take responsibility, and straight faced, Dr. Fauci looks at him and said, "I have nothing to be responsible for." The audacity on these people. Says the only time politicians should lie is when it comes to sharing certain information to the public, and especially when it comes to sharing information to foreign nations and enemies. Yeah, so I think when we talk about politicians lying, the notion of protecting secrets falls in a different category. I wouldn't necessarily call not, giving out the nuclear codes lying. I think there's a lot of stuff for homeland security and stuff like that, where absolutely there needs to be classified information. But what we're talking about is out and out lies, where you said a thing and you knew that was true, or you said you were going to do a thing with no intention of ever doing it. That's what we and then, as Trey said, when you get caught, and instead of just being like, you got me, there's always another spin to it, and more spin to it, and more spin to it, which goes back to what I was saying about Harley's comment that unfortunately it does seem like politicians do have to lie because politicians lie. And so it is circular like that, but it is what it is. All right, where were we? Let's back this up a little bit.
Telling the truth or shading the truth in particular ways. That's not what's new. I think what's new is where people are presented with data and their immediate response isn't, let me bring you some data that rebuts that data, but I don't even have to look at your data because your motivation is bad.
That's exactly right. This whole notion of political discourse this is why you'll hear me say all the time, stop trying to win an argument and just have the conversation. Because when you're trying to win, then your goals are not the same as trying to understand, or at least trying to get to the truth. Those are three different goals. So if you're trying to win, then it doesn't really matter what the truth is. At least if you're trying to find common ground, then you're looking to increase relation. That came out weird, but you know what I mean. Increase how we interact with each other. And then if you genuinely are trying to get to the truth is what will set you free. But the truth is what will, in any situation, is going to be the best answer as to how to move forward. It may not be a direct answer like, oh, we found the truth about this thing, so we solved world hunger. Yay! Oh my goodness. It's not necessarily going to be that simple, but it certainly will help us get to the next step of solving whatever issue we're talking about.
This philosophy.
How dangerous is it, though, that we've also become incredibly tribal? I think more than I can ever remember in modern history, actually. When I read your Twitter feed, I think you're always prepared to call out your own side if you genuinely feel there's been some egregious wrongdoing that they've done or a terrible mistake or whatever. But the number of people prepared to do that now on social media in particular is minuscule. Most people park themselves into their tribe, whatever that tribe may be, and there is no moving them. There's no deviation, even if the facts change. And again, it plays in.
And then you'll see this with people still who think that Kyle Rittenhouse killed black people. That's not true. Harley saying the only reason politicians lie now is because we let them get away with it. They would lie less often if they didn't have immunity. Yeah, this goes back to, I think, the idea that they exactly as you're saying, we let them get away with it. We don't say that because Joe Biden said this in 1994 that in 2020 we're not going to vote for him. People were just like, half the people didn't care, half the people didn't remember, and half the people just hated Trump, and it didn't matter. I know that's three halves, but you get my point. Very insightful.
If your feelings are the facts, then if you feel that fact is wrong, well, that's enough.
Right. But the tribalism that I think has cropped up is rooted in a philosophy called the motivism, which is the idea that everybody's actual viewpoints are not driven by their view of the facts. It's driven by their internal emotions. But that allows me.
So that's this motivism is the opposite of facts don't care about your feelings, and it is. Feelings don't care about the facts. Whatever you feel, whatever you're motivated by, whatever's your truth, that's what matters.
Me to do on the converse is attribute malicious intent to people that I'm arguing with, and it means that I get to ignore all of their facts. The reason that I'm disagreeing with you is because I'm good and you're a bad person. And what that means is that people on my own side, for example, they might be upset with me for talking with people on the other side of the aisle, because why would you talk to somebody who's a nasty person who has bad motivations? And
that's a good point. It's not just the left that has this automatic shutdown. It's we're all guilty of it to some extent. And it's reasonable to some extent. Like, let's take flat Earth. I can dismiss flat earthers without really looking into what they've said. But point being, or point in case that I actually have taken time to look at these Eric Dubé things, and so unless there's something brand new, I can just dismiss that without taking it seriously. So there's some level of where it's reasonable, and then there's some level where it's not reasonable, but we still do it. Where, personally, maybe if somebody was telling me something, bring it back to the jab, that the fact is that even if in 2021 or whatever, statistically, it would have made sense for me to take it. Now here today, I'm glad that I didn't. And so maybe, that doesn't mean that I don't think it was good for other people. But I'm just saying there's a certain level of not giving other people a chance, and within that, sometimes it's rational and sometimes it's not.
The same thing on people on the other side talking to me.
Mhm.
I was having a conversation one time with a very, very large left-wing podcaster. This is probably 2018. And I said, we should really do like a crossover podcast for the midterm elections. It'll do huge business. And my side will be totally fine with it. It'll be great. And he said, your side will be fine with it. My side will kill me.
Right.
And that's probably
But that's
right.
the way it's gone. And Bill Maher said to me, that comedy used to be rooted really in right-wing extremism being comedic. And that was where liberal comics like him could get their material.
Yeah, think about going all the way back. I bring up George Carlin all the time because he's such a perfect example of a political comedian. But he was like essentially not overgrown, what a grown up hippie. He was essentially a grown up hippie, and he wasn't still in the hippie lifestyle. But I mean, that's the mentality that he had. He was very liberal, and he grew up in the he was like young in the 60s and of that age. And then I guess liberal comedy died with him. I don't know what happened. It says you can dislike a fact. Disliking a fact, however, does not change it. Instead of first determining why that fact is, they just decide it's not true because they don't like it. Exactly. And again, this goes for people on both sides, and this goes for things where sometimes. No, actually, that doesn't apply. So yeah, you're absolutely right, because the flat Earth thing is not a fact. They want it to be a fact, but it's not a fact.
Now he said it's mainly to the left. It's the woke area of politics that gives him the most comedic material, and he can't believe it. As a liberal himself, he feels just really frustrated that they don't understand how ridiculous and laughable their positions on things have become.
And shout out to Bill Maher, because he had one of the worst, other than Sam Harris, maybe one of the worst cases of Trump derangement syndrome that I had ever seen. I used to love Bill Maher. And not because he was telling me the things that I wanted to hear as an ignorant, passive liberal, but because he would kind of poke fun at things that, as a liberal at the time, I didn't realize were there to be made fun of. And so he was that guy, kind of like what Jimmy Dore is now, where he's on the left. He's a leftist. He's a progressive, but he makes fun of and criticizes the people on his own side in his own party, instead of just lobbing attacks over at the other side of the fence. And it's once Trump was in office, Bill Maher just could not talk about anything else. And now that he's gone, I credit to him. He's finally coming back down. He's finally talking about wokeness. He's finally talking about a lot of the things that you couldn't talk about. All these things that we're talking about with deciding on facts and like Harley was saying, they just decide it's not true. A lot of that came from or not necessarily initially, but a lot of that was present with guys like Bill Maher, who were these thought leaders. Certainly, if you look at what the Daily Show had become after Jon Stewart, it was bad. It was bad. But with the reason I asked so we got 50-50 on Piers Morgan being mainstream, is that the reason I think this conversation is not as heated as it might have been a few years ago is because the ideas of conservatism, what we would use as an umbrella term, are closer to, you gotta go lay down, you gotta wait for a super chat, Bubba. That title of conservatism, the umbrella that covers, is much wider than progressive or leftist. which I think most people who are into politics, who are on the left, are not passively just liberals. And I specifically use liberal, leftist, and progressive as three different categories. And I mean, we all know that they're not the same thing. However, you want to define those exact things is not really relevant. The point is that there's less people. Let's say there's a much larger group of people who are kind of into politics, but not really, but may have opinions about cultural issues that fall a little bit closer to what conservatism is now today than what the leftist establishment stuff, if that makes any sense. I hope it did. Horace says, I don't like people dying from cancer, but me disliking it doesn't mean it suddenly stops happening. Yeah, that would be amazing if the world worked that way, but fortunately, it does not.
But it's driving a bunch of people who consider themselves center or center left into the arms of people who are more conservative.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. Thank you, Ben. The Overton window has shifted, and so now if you were just kind of not paying attention in 2012, 2013, 14, 15, whatever, you would probably be more in line with the liberal side of the agenda. But now that is that seems to be less and less the case.
Actually, I've made the point before that I think the future of the West may ride not on people who agree with me most of the time, conservatives.
The hell is everyone?
I think the future of the West might ride on people who consider themselves kind of traditional liberals, who may agree with some of the left's prescriptions economically, but who disagree with the way they want to get there, which is very often by silencing debate, using censorship, shutting things down. So the question is going to be, are they willing to put off utopia for a while in order to engage in the debate?
Because I've always thought, like myself,
I like that he put it like that, and I don't know if Piers even picked up on it. Are they willing to put off this utopia? Because that's the mindset. It seems that these liberals have the idea that they can fix the world through the government, and it's just the Republicans standing in their way. But that's not how the world works. And so this idea of, oh, you think you could put off the idea of utopia to engage in debate? That here, let's do it again. I thought that was funny.
They want to get there, which is very often by silencing debate, using censorship, shutting things down. So the question is going to be, are they willing to put off utopia for a while in order to engage in the debate?
Because I've always thought, like myself, I've always thought myself not really as a political ideologue, right? I think I'm pretty centrist and call out everybody, really. I see myself as a journalist, fundamentally.
Okay. Hey, we got Divine and Rod in the building. What is good? What is good? Welcome to the party, brother. From Cali, West Coast, West Side, West Good. We are, as you can see, Ben Shapiro on Piers Morgan, uncensored. Welcome to the party, brother.
And don't think that being partisan helps that particular profession very much, as we.
So I mean, that's with the poll that I put up before of do you think he is mainstream? The fact that he sees himself as a journalist who's supposed to be completely objective. Obviously, anybody's gonna have their biases, but you're supposed to be objective. I don't know if I would agree with that. I think you're a bit more of a pundit than a journalist.
We've seen from those who've actually drifted down into being partisan of journalists. It doesn't work. You become an activist. But someone said the other day, are you a conservative? I said, well, I've never identified as a conservative. But the farther lunatic that the left woke go, the more the pendulum swings. And eventually we all get sucked into thinking, well, okay, actually, by comparison to this,
exactly.
I probably am getting a bit conservative because
and this, if you think about what if you remember Brandon Straka, I think his name was spearheading this movement, left the left, because of exactly what they're talking about. But that movement really kind of died because it just was a thing that people were doing all by themselves. They didn't need look, hey, you can move. At the time, you definitely did, because Republicans. But it's just becoming more and more and more and be like, you know what? I guess now that Trump's gone, I don't really hate everything that they're doing. And over on the left, they're trying to sexualize kids. They're trying to do all of this. They're trying to. So maybe, all right, I guess I'm a conservative.
I think they're lunatics.
I think what's happening right now, and it's happening in a bunch of countries, is people are just craving any sense of normality.
And common sense.
And no one is providing it to them.
Right.
No one is providing it to them. They're taking...
That is where whoever is better at providing that message for the 2024 election, getting back to normalcy. We're still in this post-Rona world, and they're trying to switch it to something to find another reason to lock down and all that stuff. If you pay attention to the World Forum of Economics, not in that order, and the whoever is better at bringing this idea that the America that we know and love, it's time to get back to that. Now, obviously, we have Make America Great Again, but the context of that was before the lockdown. So there was a lot of pushback against MAGA because of like, whoa, when was America great? Great for who? That kind of stuff. But now we're all in that same boat of there was a world that we all lived in and shared just a few years ago. If we can get that back, then I think whoever is better at delivering that message is going to get the vote on either side.
A slap at the people who are responsible for the status quo as license to now do whatever they want. And so you're seeing the pendulum swinging wildly side to side, because if you're a political leader, you're trying to harness the passions of the moment to get done the thing that you really, really want to get done.
Harness the passions of the moment to get things done that you really want to get done. He is a wordsmith. Indeed, he is.
Reality, the population just wants things to kind of just stop. Just like, leave us alone and stop.
Right, I totally agree. And I think that's the majority of people. Right? I mean, today, Rolling Stone published an opinion piece on why cancel culture is good for democracy. And I read this piece. And
Harley and Trey, I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. If you are part of the replay gang, do me a favor, because I'm feeling lonely with just my two good friends here when we're supposed to be having a party. Thankfully, they are here. But do me a big favor and just leave a comment and tell me what you were doing. What, not as an excuse. I'm just curious. What were you guys out doing while we were doing this? Not shaming anybody. I'm just curious.
It was so completely deluded because, of course, cancel culture is the antithesis of a democracy. It's actually the antithesis of liberalism. You can't pretend to be liberal with what that actually was intended to mean and support cancel culture.
You can't pretend to be liberal and support cancel culture. The caveat is what that actually was intended to mean. You guys know where I'm going with this. Semantic obfuscation. He's absolutely right. If you identify as a liberal, as the word was actually meant to intended to mean, then you can't be in favor of cancel culture. That is the opposite. But because they have taken over the language and been able to twist it, you can hold conflicting ideas. You can hold conflicting ideologies, and you can want things that are zero sum. You can want two things at the same time that can't happen, and it's not a contradiction. Well, it is a contradiction, but in their minds, it's not a contradiction.
I think the left uses cancel culture in a very different way than most of us use cancel culture. When we talk about cancel culture, typically what we mean is you say something that they don't like on the air, and they decide to secondarily boycott your advertisers, or they go to your bosses and call for you to be fired. And that's what we mean by cancel culture. What they mean is, well, we're allowed to disapprove of you. Well, sure, you're allowed to disapprove. Turn the channel. Right? You don't have to subscribe to Daily Wire. You don't have to watch your show. Right? But what they do with that instead is they attempt to get you kicked off the air, not by dint of lack of ratings or something, but just because they're so angry that they're going to go yell at people and bother them until you get kicked off the air.
It's not enough that we are all, because here's the thing about the somebody who deserves to be canceled. If everybody agrees that they deserve to be canceled, then they're just going to be canceled. You don't need some kind of mob-led campaign against them. If you do, then whatever they did probably wasn't that bad. It says a liberal, a supporter of a political and social philosophy that promotes individual rights, civil liberties, democracy, and free enterprise. And all of those things are negated by the existence of the type of mob-led cancel culture that we're talking about. Thank you again to Harley Rose, our resident fact checker and researcher. Hey, we got Kelly Green. What is good? What is good? Welcome to the party, brother. Glad you're here. Oh, and we got Jess Talk About It in the building. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Now we're getting the party started. Jess is also another great YouTuber. I was just on her stream a couple nights ago. Very interesting conversation. I just dropped the link to her channel. Please go check her out. Welcome to the party. So we're just talking about Ben Shapiro on Piers Morgan, and they're talking about if you are a liberal in the way that it was intended to mean, then you cannot be for cancel culture. So let's just back that up. Let's see what I want. Right here. Right, yeah.
Cancel culture. When we talk about cancel culture, typically what we mean is you say something that they don't like on the air, and they decide to secondarily boycott your advertisers, or they go to your bosses and call for you to be fired. And that's what we mean by cancel culture. What they mean is, well, we're allowed to disapprove of you. Well, sure, you're allowed to disapprove. Turn the channel. Right? You don't have to subscribe to Daily Wire. You don't have to watch your show. Right? But what they do with that instead is they attempt to get you kicked off the air, not by dint of lack of ratings or something, but just because they're so angry that they're going to go yell at people and bother them until you get kicked off the air. That's what cancel culture really is.
And the difference between the two, of just saying I'm going to boycott this, and I think that anybody else who has heard this would also want to boycott this, and having this mob-led thing where we have to cancel this person. What you end up doing, and this is exactly why they're doing it, is you bring in people who want to be part of the crowd who didn't actually hear or see the cancelable offense. So many people have been canceled, and the mob behind their cancellation a lot of times didn't even know. I was bringing up Kyle Rittenhouse before, and like I said, there's still people who think that he killed black people. That's not true.
I interviewed Congressman George Santos this week, who, even by the standards of fibbing politicians, I mean, it was quite startling. I'll just play the clip where he admits to being a terrible liar.
Oh, all right. Who is this? Oh, struggle streaming over there too. That's not frozen.
I've been a terrible liar. I mean, would you be prepared to say that?
Okay.
Sure. Like I said,
I didn't think it was going to be like that. Damn. Yeah, sure. I'm a terrible liar. Come on.
I've been a terrible liar. I mean, would you be prepared to say that?
sure. Like I said,
then.
well, I've been a terrible liar on those subjects.
I mean,
talk about no accountability. What was talk about this? Like, yeah, I'm a horrible liar, and you should still vote for me because the other guy is so bad and lies even more. That takes it to a whole new level. I mean, getting caught in a lie is one thing, but just admitting that you are a liar as a person in politics, how does that work? So again, before we had liberal, a supporter of political and social philosophy that promotes individual rights, civil liberties, democracy, and free enterprise, compared to a conservative, person favoring free enterprise, private ownership, and socially traditional ideas. Thank you, our resident fact checker.
this guy's a serving member of the United States Congress. Right? He's one of the most powerful politicians in the country. But
that should be a fireable offense. You should resign. I mean, obviously, you can't fire people in Congress, but you should resign if you're caught on camera saying, "Yes, I'm a liar." Why are you still representing anybody, unless you are to say that I represent a bunch of liars? I'm flabbergasted.
By default. And he just admitted to being a terrible liar, whether that meant just volume of lies or he's very bad at them, or in his case, uniquely, probably both. But what did you make of that? And should someone like him be allowed to stay in Congress?
I mean, I think that the voters are going to decide whether he gets to stay in Congress or not. I don't have a lot of standards for who gets kicked out of Congress by members of their own party, because, frankly, I think that he's almost the apotheosis of what politics has reached, which is
Exactly. I don't know exactly what the apotheosis. I'm gonna imagine it is something similar to the epitome of what politics is. And this is kind of what I was saying before, is that we understand that this is how politics works, just like the other 16 guys behind Lance Armstrong in that cyclist race knew that if you have any chance at winning, you gotta juice. So I guess the question is, how do we turn that around? And I think the answer is by simply demanding accountability and not letting these people just go by. Like if that person who they cut to, I was like, yeah, I'm a terrible liar. If I was represented by that person, I would be sending that video out to everybody I knew and be like, we got to get rid of this guy. And again, not because it's a mob-led thing, but because, hey, if you think that what he said right here is justifiable for him to not be a representative of you, then we should let that be known. Harley Rose, our resident fact checker, says Article 1, Section 5 of the United States Constitution provides that each House of Congress may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and with the concurrence of 2/3, expel a member. Since 1789, the Senate has expelled only 15 members. Because there's only been 15 lies. There's only been 15 lies from senators since 1789, right? Probably not. Probably not. And it just goes to show you exactly how much they can get away with. They just lie out in the open. They don't care anymore. And I think the fact that it's the same people who were in office before there was social media, and some of them even before TV was a regular thing where people like would watch TV. You know, I mean, even now, most people don't really watch C-SPAN. You'll catch clips of it on social media. And so, you know, things like when you heard AOC or Hillary Clinton going and doing rallies in the South and putting on a Southern twang, you know, we here love our collard greens. Like, what are you doing? We know how you talk. The rest of the world is going to see that. But to them, this is how that's what brought them to the dance. That's what brought them to the dance. So why would they change anything? And especially because of the fact that despite we can see all of that now, they're still in office. Why would they change?
Lie as much as I can get away with it, and then the minute I can't get away with it, I'll just be like, "Well, I'm sorry, I lied." I mean, that's
as
really
a
sad.
high-profile Jewish man. I want to play you the clip where he talks about being Jew-ish, where he separates the two parts of the word.
Oh God, yeah. I remember. I was saying this the other day, Trey. That I remember using woke in the way that like they think they are using it, non-ironically. And it was, you know, before people were actually using that word and you know, turned it into BS. It was like, yeah, stay woke, like be aware, you know, wake up. But of course, then everybody who learns one thing that they didn't know yesterday, they're like, oh my God, I got all the answers. Bro, you got to be woke like me. You got to wake up. You got to open your eyes, sheeple. Like, come on, come on. All right, so separating the parts about being Jew-ish. What?
Let's have a look at this.
I'd always say I was raised Catholic.
This is the same guy. We got to get. Does anybody know who this is? He didn't say his name, and it's not on the thing.
But I come from a Jewish family, so that makes me Jew-ish. I said it to a room with 1,000 people in November. People were hysterically laughing. It was funny to them. They loved it.
I'm not racist because other people found it funny. What? I don't think it works like that, bro.
Now, the people have already said they were at that event and they weren't laughing with him. There's no sign of any evidence he has any Jewish heritage. He claimed his grandparents fled the Holocaust. There seems to be no evidence for that. His parents are both from Brazil. And
Yikes. Yikes. Lying about escaping the Holocaust? Like, that's worse than lying about the being, you know, Pocahontas' lie about being Native American, with Rachel Dolezal lying about being black. Lie about being Jewish all you want, but don't bring the Holocaust into it. Come on. Ollie says citizens can't just vote a member out of citizens can't just vote members of. Okay, I thought that I want to make sure it wasn't me. Citizens can't just vote out a member of Congress. All we can do is complain to the ethics committee. They're the ones who decide if to take actions or not, and they will decide. But we also have to remember that the term is much shorter. It's not a 4-year term, right? I think it's a 2-year term for congressmen and senators. Is that right? Fact checker, get on that for me. You probably already know that. Oh, that is definitely worse than calling it the Holocaust. But for YouTube censorship purposes, you're goddamn right. That's what I'm going to be calling it from now on. But yeah, so the citizens can't just vote a member out, but the fact that they're constantly fundraising and constantly having to run, and it surprises me that we don't see more turnover. But it again comes back to people getting involved. And so even if you can't vote a member out, you can complain to the ethics committee. You can start a social media campaign to show people, hey, look what this guy just said. If you're okay with it, then fine. But if you're not, let's stand up and say something. But people are too stuck just supporting the current thing.
And this idea that somehow he can be Jew-ish, i.e. not actually Jewish, just ish.
Well, I mean, honestly, what he should have said is, on the inside, I feel Jewish. Right? I feel so Jewish on the inside. So I'm Jewish. I mean, what are you going to do? Challenge my feelings of being Jewish?
Exactly. That's the way it works now. I feel Jewish. Therefore, I am.
Repeatedly said he's Jewish.
That takes, I think, therefore, I am to a whole new level.
I mean, and he wasn't joking. We've seen the clip, so he said it repeatedly.
Yeah, no, again, I sort of see him as he's almost the apex predator of politicians at this point. He's reached the logical endpoint of where
Did anybody get a name on that guy?
Politics is going. And, you know, it is the job of people like you or me to call it out when he says things that are not true. But I think that we have reached a sort of post-truth era, not in that people don't pay attention to the truth, but I'm not even sure how many people care about the truth.
That's a good point. You know, you hear Jordan Peterson talking about, postmodernists all the time. And that goes along with this post-truth world where the truth, it's not about they don't know the truth. It's that they don't care about the truth. Ooh, good one. Ben Shapiro. He says, Congress members can serve 2 years, then have to be voted in again. However, there is no limit to how many times you can run. Yeah. So if they go unopposed or you know, if nobody brings up issues with what they are or are not doing, like what they are doing what they shouldn't be, or they're not doing what they should be, then they can just run and run and run and run and run and run. And usually the fact that they are the incumbent gives them an advantage because of the normalcy bias. So unless the person is really, really, really bad, especially at lower levels, you know, congressmen and senators, and then and anything lower than that, people just don't really get involved in local politics. And I'm definitely guilty of that myself. I do want to be more involved with, you know, where I'm living. I just moved here, so that's a little bit of an excuse, but not really. I did register to vote, but I didn't get around to learning about anybody in the in the midterms, and I really wish I had. I think that's a big failure on my part. So that's definitely something that, you know, by next year, even though, you know, this is not the general election, I still think it's important to go down in person and vote on election day. But point being that if we don't bring to the attention of the people who it matters to, that, hey, this guy is either doing things he shouldn't or is not doing the things that he should, then you're just going to get voted in again. Says, I think both sides are participating in keeping the BS going to run for re-election off the platform of we have unfinished business that keeps getting them elected. Exactly. We got a however, and I think she does mean how, and then ever. What you come in with that?
Now, I do think that can be exaggerated. I do think the bulk of the population really does care very much about the truth, and that's why I think that there's going to be a tidal wave of resentment that is about to crash across a bunch of societies.
How important is the truth to you?
The problem is that, yes, people do care about the truth. They just don't care enough to do anything about, you know, actual disinformation, actual misinformation. It's sad. So Harley says, however, Ralph Nader, I thought it said Ralph Nader. Ralph Norman introduced an amendment in the U.S. Constitution to impose term limits on members of Congress. I have heard about this. The amendment would limit U.S. senators. The amendment would limit U.S. senators to 2 6-year terms and members of the U.S. House of Representatives 3 2-year terms after the date of its enactment. So, I mean, there's definitely pros and cons to this. The notion that, you know, if somebody is good, then you do want them to keep going. But I think and they won't be. But I think the negatives of, or I got myself all spun around. So the negative to the term limits is that if you have somebody good, then they can't stay. But the positive is that most of the time that's not the case. So most of the time we're going to get somebody in there, and they're going to, do whatever they have to do to stay in office. And then with the term limits, they'll run out, and we'll have to pay attention to who is actually running. Because again, when the incumbent is there, especially the longer they've been in office, the more that power of being in the incumbent has an effect. And so the people who are lifelong politicians, you're not gonna be able to do that anymore. And I mean that there's still the revolving door with big tech, big pharma, big whatever, but that's a whole other issue. So I generally I would be in favor of term limits for Congress and Senate. What about you guys? Let's make that one a poll.
For you, because you've got this huge following now, massive podcast, tens of millions of people watching your stuff on social media and so on. How important is truth to you now, that everything comes out of your mouth or that you write is fact?
I mean, it's the most important thing to me because I have to sleep at night.
Hey, we got Meatrum in the building. What is good? What is good? Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Said you are such a writer, Jesus Christ. I'm not Jesus Christ. I'm the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Welcome to the party. We are watching Ben Shapiro on Piers Morgan, talking about all of the wokeness and stuff like that. Welcome to the party, brother.
I mean, it's something that I try to think about as much as humanly possible is never lie to your audience. Never say to your audience a thing that you know to be not true, and try to follow the best data possible. And that does mean that you're very often having to be more
Who's mean?
more nuanced than sort of the politics of
We
the
got a
situation
raid.
may allow.
Okay.
Because the easiest position in politics is always to take the hardest
One time
right
I don't
or the
open
hardest
up the
left
Twitch
position,
thing.
the sort of most pure, most easily understood position, or to just play the easiest game of all, which is, again, my opponent is a bad guy. My opponent is a person who hates your guns.
When we had our dust up at CNN about gun control, for example, I'm not going to go over all that again, but had I been very different with it, if I'd been very respectful and said, look, I'm a British guy, these aren't my laws, I'm just as horrified as you are by these massacres, and didn't talk about gun control, which I think has always been a terribly inflammatory phrase for many Americans. They don't want to be controlled.
That's true.
And they certainly don't want to hear a British accent telling them about how there should be more control.
Well, I think the larger issue with talking about gun control when things happen is that is not the conversation itself, is that is not an appropriate answer to gun violence. It's the simple thing of the bad guys will get the guns regardless. So making these gun laws, it's not just that that's the reason it's so inflammatory. Davanrad says removing the BS pork that gets added to most bills. Yeah, that's another big one. That's another big one. Getting the bills to be one issue. I think it was Rand Paul who was talking about that. I don't know, but it was maybe Matt Gaetz. Somebody was talking about how we have to these omnibus bills where it's 7 million different things where they can say, oh, it's an infrastructure bill. Schools are infrastructure. Welfare benefits are infrastructure. We need one issue so that, because the other thing Marjorie Taylor Greene was talking about when she was on Timcast is that they'll give you like 2 hours to read 2,000 pages. And people just don't do it. They just go with the party line. So even if they wanted to read the bill and vote on what's actually in there, then they can't. There's just simply not enough time for them to read the words that are in there. So they just got to go with their best guess.
But if I'd phrased it as about gun safety, if that had always been the debate in America,
that definitely would be better. I don't think that gun safety has anything to do with bad people purposely using guns for bad things.
How do you make it safer in a country that has 400 million firearms in circulation? Would that have been a more constructive debate, do you think?
I think it would have been a more informative debate. And the reason being, I think that clarity is very much opposed sometimes by passion. We all get passionate about these issues. I'm not going to pretend I'm not passionate on my show, or I'm completely dispassionate in all circumstances. I'm obviously not. But, I think that that would have allowed for the kind of discussion where we could have looked at data from various.
You guys are the representatives. You guys here from Twitch? You guys are the representatives of if I'm going to keep going on Twitch, because we got a whole bunch of people over here, but this is all I get whenever we go over to Twitch. So I don't know why I still do it. Harlan says the problem with gun control is it only punishes those who don't commit these crimes, not those who do. We don't restrict cars or alcohol when a drunk driver kills someone. Exactly.
Areas of the world where have regulations been effective? Where have they not been effective? What are, as I said on the show, actually at the time, I believe, like what are the risks and rewards of particular policies? That's where the good discussion area, I think, gets done.
I mean, just final point on the gun thing, but
we got 50-50 on the poll. Give me one more. Oh, come on.
And I'm aware many viewers who watch this in America own guns and support.
Yeah, I own guns.
The Second Amendment rights and so on.
I am.
Where do you see the line going? As you have all these massacres and as gun ownership increases, there's more guns in circulation. What do you do about that? I mean, as a country as big and powerful as America.
Why is there anything that needs to be done about that? Why just, using the same thing Harley was just talking about? Do we need to worry about more cars being on the road? That too many people are owning too many cars? Are we worried that there's too many alcohol companies? Then why would we be worried about good people, law-abiding citizens, having a tool? Aaron said, freezing my booty off up in the hill above Los Angeles, waiting for my vintage pickup truck dropped off. Well, hopefully my beautiful words are keeping you warm. Sorry, I don't know. Just says, I think gun laws should be for the mentally unstable. Well, I mean, certainly we should have laws around guns, but they should be extremely minimal. The Constitution states the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. So obviously, if we're talking about somebody who is shown to be mentally unstable, then we don't necessarily want them to have a gun. But how do you determine who is mentally unstable and where do you draw the line? What is mentally unstable? What if you take antidepressants? Are you mentally unstable? What if you have a Xanax prescription for only when you fly on planes? You have a fear of planes, and so you have a prescription to that. Versus what if you have a prescription for Xanax and you need it every day because you're going through panic attacks? I get what you're saying, but that's why it's not as simple as just you can't have guns, you can't have guns, you can't have guns, because how do you decide that? And again, that comes to putting the government in charge of determining who is mentally stable or not. Well, it says the problem is the people who commit these crimes, not what they use. Exactly. It's the people. It's not the tool. Just the same thing as if some, those people who ran down protesters in a car or a truck or whatever. It's not the tool. It's the person. Exactly, Divine Ra. That's where this ends up. And I'm not criticizing you, Jess. I'm just saying that a lot of people think that this is a rational starting point. But even as a starting point, it doesn't work. Because what if you didn't want to get the jab? Maybe that is such a obvious decision, according to the government, that if you don't want to get the jab, well, you can't be mentally stable. That's a slippery slope.
What more can be done to just make it safer?
I mean, I guess
more guns.
And the measures that I've always suggested are measures that tend more toward the gun owner than toward the weapon itself, meaning that we obviously need better screening procedures for people who have a history of severe mental illness. We have red flag laws on the books, but they're not enacted. I mean, people don't actually practically follow the red flag laws, which is why I'm kind of skeptical of the idea that if we pass some more text from the legislature, that's magically going to translate into better action.
Whoa. From what I understand of the red flag laws is that, anybody can just kind of call, like almost like on a welfare check type of situation. You'd be like, oh my goodness, my neighbor is this, that, and the other, and they have a gun, so you need to come and take their guns. That's my understanding, and a crude simplification. But, and the Twitchers are gone. Thank God. All right. And that's what I understand. So if he's for them, either there's something that I'm not understanding, or I'm very much not in agreement with Ben Shapiro there. But that, again, will speak to the difference between a Republican voter and a Libertarian voter. Harley says, and we know what type of people. So the problem is the people who commit the crimes, not what they use. And we know what type of people tend to commit these crimes, but we're supporting them instead of deterring them. Yep.
What we need is more alacrity from the cops. I mean, how many?
What? Alacrity. Brisk and cheerful readiness. Okay, interesting word to use there. Come on.
Going to translate into better action. What we need is more alacrity from the cops. I mean, how many of these mass shootings have we seen where there are 1,000 red flags and the cops go to the house and then they're told, well, no, we're not going to do anything. We're going to leave you back out there. It's almost in every circumstance. So we actually do need law enforcement to have more ability and will to carry out, for example, when they know somebody is severely mentally disturbed or somebody is shooting a gun at their mother, which we've had a case like that. That would be a time where you actually remove the person's guns and keep track of them, make sure they can't actually get guns. Right? I mean,
see, if I my way again, when I was doing that debating, I would have had this kind of conversation. I can look back at those and realize I was letting my own emotions override.
We all have these. I mean,
yeah, but it's interesting, isn't it? I do think an important part of how we get to a better place as society now, away from this tribalism, away from all this stuff, is you've got to be prepared to have this kind of conversation, which doesn't end up with me just looking at you and shouting, well, you're a complete idiot because you don't agree with me, right? It's more complicated. It's more nuanced. Life is more nuanced than that.
I like to think so. And I think that, again, those conversations can be really, really productive. I try to make a habit. I have my regular daily show, but I also have a show called The Sunday Special that you've been on, in which I bring on a bunch of people who disagree, from Bill Maher to...
And he's about to say Anna Kasparian. Yep. And so I think, maybe that was my fault a little bit for not understanding why or what the purpose of the Sunday Special was. And we expected a little bit more because we know how much Anna and Ben disagree. But as he's saying, it's just to sit down with people you disagree with to find that common ground.
Yeah. And we actually try to talk through these issues. And
last time I came and I found it a very surprisingly pleasant experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's take a short break. I want to come back and ask you the most deadly question in the world right now. What is a woman? Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored, live from New York. Ben Shapiro is live and uncensored. So come on then, what is a woman?
Well, I mean, a woman is whatever J.K. Rowling says a woman is. Right. And she's right. A woman is a biological human female.
Anybody disagree with that? Anybody here disagree with that? All right.
How on earth have we got to a place where stating that simple fact has now become a stick to beat people with?
Semantic obfuscation and dogmatic thinking. That is how. When you change the meanings of words and you have this notion that rules and ideas should be followed unwaveringly and without question, that is how we get here. The divine says the revolving door of justice could use a 2x4 thrown in it.
When, from what I can ascertain, 99% of the entire planet agrees with that fact.
Yep. Again, it goes back to that idea that your subjective feeling about yourself must be reflected by the rest of the world, cheered and celebrated by the rest of the world, because that's actually what the ask is, right? The ask isn't even, I wish to be treated well in society, and you can think whatever you want of me, but you should treat me decently. That's not the actual ask. The actual ask is, I wish for you to participate in a delusion whereby I am a biological human female, or exactly the same in many important respects as a biological human female. Trans women are women, which, again, if you refuse to define what...
And that's something we talk about a lot, but something that does need to be underlined. That if you are a trans person, what you are asking is for other people to indulge in your delusion. Now, for the most part, that could be fine. That could be no big deal. If all you're saying is, my delusion is that I feel better when you say she instead of he, okay, sure, fine. My delusion is that if you call me Sally instead of Sam, that will make my day. Okay, no skin off my back. But we know that it's not just that simple. We know there's a difference between what I would say is the average trans person and the trans activists. Luckily, as we were talking about the other day, is the I guess the uprising of people who are part of the LGBT community, who are seeing that very big difference between people who are just trying to live their lives and happen to be trans, happen to be gay, happen to be whatever, and the activists who are trying to change our society and how our society works, not just to be accepted, but to be supreme. It's trans supremacy. Yeah, a woman. I like that one. I like that one. It says, I don't say with female reproductive organs because some women have theirs removed, but they are still a woman. Yeah. And I mean, there's very simple ways that we understand this way of speaking with every other categorization. Nobody is going to criticize you for saying humans have 2 hands or 2 arms. Some people only have 1. Some people don't have arms. Okay. That's not what we're talking about, are we? So the fact that you have to, in this specific context, we have to include the anomalous examples. Otherwise, we're saying they don't exist. It's silly. It is silly. The trans troller. The trans troller. Guys, I want to ask you a huge favor real quick. Just take the URL, hit this share button, plaster this out everywhere. This is Wednesday. We are usually partying on Wednesday, and I'm so glad you guys are here. But let's get this party popping. Let's do it.
About this, and I've warned about it, and we've taken it to, we said in the warnings, if you take this to a logical conclusion, it's going to get abused. And we had a stark example of this in Scotland several weeks ago with this rapist, Adam Graham, who at his trial, having raped 2 women with his penis.
Okay, well, there goes monetization. If you want to help the channel out, please do.
Her penis.
Well, this is the point. Yeah. He then turned up as Isla Bryson and said, I'm now a woman.
Have you guys heard about this? So what we're looking at is an ARPist, a serial ARPist. Then they show up to prison after being convicted.
That's him before, and then he comes along as Isla Bryson.
And that's how they shows up. Oh, it is Monday. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Anyway, so this is how this serial ARPist shows up. And I don't know if you can notice, but if we move this out of the way, I mean, we're not really, you know what I mean? And it's just, it's sad because this person got put in the women's prison. You buck the system by just being like, no, women. I'm a woman, so, how I said, non-trans women have womb removed due to medical reasons, not because they feel like it. Yeah, and I mean, think of the trauma that has to how much trauma that comes with that, and people are just choosing to do it because they think it will make them feel better. And again, we've talked about the 7 to 10 year time period of transitioning that most people, if they make it past that 7 to 10 years, they're probably, going to stay trans. But that's when a lot of people start to detransition. And we are right on in that time frame. This really started picking up a lot about 7 years ago. So we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen.
Bryson there. And the game plan, according to his ex-wife, is, well, he just wants to get into a women's prison, which is obviously what his game plan was. And he got into one. Put into a women's prison where there are women there who are vulnerable.
I'm not sure. I'm sure he's going to say it, but I'm pretty sure he did some SA to somebody in prison. I could be confusing that, but hard to keep track of all of these men who are in the women's prisons because they just say, "Oh, I'm a woman."
To attacks from people like him. That to me showed the insanity of this. We had a leader, Nicola Sturgeon, been leader of Scotland for 8 years, who supported this limitless gender identity nonsense and lost her job, actually, I think, as a direct consequence of this. Yep. I mean, let's see what she said, and I'll play it to you.
All right. So this is in relation to the person we just saw, the prisoner we just saw, who was clearly a man when he was arping all those people, and then what is a woman? Me.
Question is, are all trans
Look,
women women? You haven't answered that question.
Well, that's not the point that we're dealing with
That's
here.
the question I'm
Stop trying to win the argument and just have a conversation.
Look, trans women are women, but in the prison context, there is no automatic right for a trans
So
woman.
there are contexts where a trans woman is not a woman.
No, there is.
Well, but you just said that. So there's a context where where a trans woman is not a woman in the prison context. You just said that, lady. And then she said, no, well, no. Let's do it again. She specifically said those words. You can hear it in the, let's back it up. Come on. Why does this do this? See, we did the disk cleanup and it didn't work. I don't know. Really? Struggle streaming. Let's go. Come on.
Are all trans
Look,
women women? You
this
haven't
is-
answered that question.
Well, that's not the point that we're dealing with
That's
here.
the question I'm
Look,
asking.
trans women are women, but in the prison context,
in the prison
there is
context.
no automatic right for a trans
So
woman.
there are contexts where a trans woman is not a woman.
No, there is.
Got him.
There is circumstances in which a trans woman will be housed in the male prison estate.
Why? Why would that be? Is it because they're male? So Divine Rod says, all general population for all criminals and no AdSeg for anybody, it would be a great deterrent. I mean, I agree with you, but then the deterrent comes from, I guess, yeah, the deterrent to, you don't want to be in jail with somebody who can RPay you. I guess, but that's some harsh deterrent there. Harley says, it seems like you got a bottleneck somewhere or a bad internet connection. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely not. No, it's not the internet connection, because when this never happened on my laptop. So I don't know. It's something. Whatever.
I think that interview cost her job, because when I watched that, it went on for about 50 seconds. It was
Cost her job. Well, I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a good thing that she lost her job because she was trying to be sensitive, but if that's the world that you want to create, then you either get to be sensitive or tell the truth. You can't do both.
jaw-dropping, because actually her ideology about this was just cruelly exposed as being completely ridiculous.
Well, it's an emperor's new clothes kind of thing. And
Yep.
again, when that happens to politicians who are supposed to supposedly traffic in fact, it makes it very difficult for them. And so when you take a completely logically unsustainable position, like trans women are women, but some of those women are going to be housed with the men, which is what she does in that clip, everybody can see how ridiculous it is. And it exposes the ideology for what it is, which
A sham. It is a sham. It is a complete agenda to get their ideas propagated far enough in society that it doesn't matter anymore that they don't make sense. And they are doing it. It is working. We are in that society right now.
which is baseless and nonsense and extraordinarily negative. Because again, if you undermine
Yup.
societal perceptions of truth, we're supposed to be living in this terrible time of misinformation and disinformation. I can't think of anything worse in terms of misinformation than the idea that a biological man is in fact a female.
And when you see what's happening in sport, it's even more absurd, where you see 6'3" swimmers, formerly male swimmers, dominating the women's sport. And you think, well, where does this leave women's sport? If you just
Shout out to Leah Thomas for ruining women's sports. Not single-handedly, but definitely doing it.
allow this to continue, ultimately, women's sport will get
I
destroyed.
mean, honestly, the most frightening part of this to me is not even sort of the direct consequences of this. And
Sorry, well, I'll go back to this, but Piers Morgan just said they will destroy women's sports. Women's sports have already been destroyed. Women's sports have already been destroyed. There is a chance to turn that around, but the destruction of women's sports, but womanhood in general, has already begun. So the notion that this is some far off thing that, oh, we better be careful. Nah, we are already there. Ryan said the reason we traded the Merchant of Death for that low-tier basketball player was because they were going to pull down what? Oh, gotcha. Okay. Talking about Brittany Griner. So the reason we traded the Merchant of Death for Brittany Griner was because they were going to pull down those pans to determine which prison to send her. Good one.
And some of it is direct.
All right, so let's back up and see what exactly he was saying.
Even more absurd, where you see 6'3" swimmers, formerly male swimmers, dominating the women's sport. And you think, well, where does this leave women's sport? If you just allow this to continue, ultimately, women's sport will get destroyed.
I mean, honestly, the most frightening part of this to me is not even sort of the direct consequences of this. And some of it is directed at kids, right? I mean, we are teaching kids in the United States who are 5, 6, 7 years old about gender fluidity, about how boys can become girls, which kids are vulnerable. Kids need to be protected from nonsense. And kids actually need rules and expectations. And basically saying to them that you can be a member of the opposite sex is insane. And what we've seen, predictably enough, from young people, from teenagers, is a radical, skyrocketing, increasing rate of people who are identifying as trans or gender non-binary, and then, not shockingly, at the exact same time, a rapid rise in suicidal ideation and depression and confusion. None of that is a shock. This is all a social contagion.
Social contagion. We talk about it all the time. What I'd be curious about is, where do you draw the line about lying to children about the real world? So I'm sure, obviously he's Jewish, but I'm sure he wouldn't necessarily have an issue with telling kids about Santa and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny and stuff like that. And these are on the same continuum, that telling kids that Santa does what Santa does, and telling the kid that they can change their biological sex. Those are both the same thing, but just varying degrees. Obviously, the latter is way up here, and the former is lower. But the question is, where do you draw the line? What is the lie that is just too far, that you shouldn't be telling children that lie? Certainly, you shouldn't be telling them that they can change their biological sex. Most people would be okay with you talking about Santa. So where is the line? Holly says, why can't there just be feminine men? This was when this first started. That was my thought. Let me just finish reading this, but you are exactly right with that question. So why can't there just be feminine men? Do they think becoming a woman will make their life better? What's their thinking behind this? That's exactly what they think. They think that the whatever issues that they are having, becoming a woman will fix that issue. When of course that's not the case. Addressing that issue is what will fix that issue. But the social contagion aspect that Ben's talking about right now has people thinking, especially young women, that any issue that they have, and young women have issues just because, just like any young person going through puberty, coming of age, all of that stuff comes with a lot of confusion, a lot of heartache, we've all been there. But luckily, when we were there wasn't an entire industry saying, hey, cut up your balls or breasts and it'll fix everything. But now there is. And so the question, why can't there just be feminine men? I always thought it was completely contradictory to the notion of, well, gender is just a social construct. Okay, then why is it so important that you adhere to one or the other? That kind of pokes a hole in the whole thing. If you are biologically a man, and this idea of being your true self just means that you are significantly more feminine, you wear dresses and you do whatever. Why does it have to do, what does that have to do with changing the categorization of your biology? It's speaking out of both sides of your mouth. Either your gender doesn't matter, or it does. If it doesn't matter, then just do you. If it does matter, then you can't just erase it. Well, it goes on to say, telling a child Santa is real will resolve itself once the child matures and doesn't have devastating, irreversible consequences when it does. I agree. So where is the line? Because again, it's a continuum. There's the Santa is on one end where it's gonna be fine. Nothing's bad is gonna happen. Telling them they can change their sex is going to have devastating, irreversible consequences. But there's other lies that we tell. That you should go to college. That could be a lie in the sense that you don't really know if that's the best option for that person. But we still go along with it. What about the idea that you should behave a certain way at work? Maybe if you're telling your kids that you should go along to get along, that you don't want to get fired and you want to be nice to your boss and all this and that and get along with your coworkers. Maybe that's not exactly the right thing. Maybe that's not a lie. But what is it? Where's the line of things that we can tell children that are not true, or at least not necessarily true, but it's still acceptable to propagate that lie? Changing your sex ain't it. That's past the line. Just says, I'm for feminine men. They should be free. I agree with you. I completely agree with you. I mean, I probably don't want to hang out with them. You probably don't want to date them. But there's plenty of people out there who do. And they should be allowed to express themselves as they feel without feeling as though they have to change their gender. This is very similar to the gatekeeping. The gatekeeping that's done by by organized religion of gatekeeping morality. It's almost as if the trans activists are gatekeeping mental health. They're gatekeeping the idea that you cannot be a healthy, happy person unless you do this. Unless you change your gender, you can't be happy. Maybe for some people, that's the case. Sure. But if you make that the only answer to fixing your mental health issues, the only answer to fixing your social issues, well, guess what? A lot of people are going to go down that road, even if it's not right for them. And then everybody else feels like, well, there is no answer. There is no answer. Dogmatic thinking, guys. It's all, this is all we talk about. Everything that we talk about comes back to these same 2 or 3 things: semantic obfuscation and dogmatic thinking. I'm telling you, these are the 2 things. If we can rid these from society, we could be, in a technologically advanced as Kang the Conqueror. I just saw that today. Demonrod says the line is when the person in the Tinkerbell outfit at storytime has a 5 o'clock shadow. Oh no! Oh no! Yeah, I mean that's pretty far up there. But even to play devil's advocate, if it's not necessarily the dress up part, it's the sexualization part. And I'm willing to grant that, okay, there is this area where we're playing dress up, and it is dress up in a very feminine manner, and it's specifically for men who don't get to experience that femininity in the rest of their lives, and it does not have to be sexual. I'm willing to grant that that is possible. What I'm not willing to grant is that is the norm of what drag is. That it's just dress up. It's just self-expression. No. You can certainly have people up on a stage dancing on a pole that isn't stripping, but probably not though, right? Holly said, I'd rather they be feminine men than trans women. By being a feminine man, you can be true to yourself and not lie to people by trying to portray yourself as someone you are not. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. How many, specifically men, how many men's lives would be saved just by following this? Thousands. Thousands of men. It's really sad. It's really sad. It's all about social norms and the social contagion.
And there's never been anything
remotely
remotely
like
like
scandal of the Tavistock Clinic in London, which anyone who raised any concerns about this was immediately branded transphobic, which put people off raising concerns.
Huh? I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that. Hold on. Let's see. What did he say?
There's never been anything remotely like
the scandal of the Tavistock Clinic in
this Tavistock Clinic. Tavistock Clinic. Let's just go with independent.uk says Tavistock gender clinic facing legal action over quote failure of care claims. The clinic accused of rushing children into quote into taking life-altering puberty blockers without adequate consideration or proper diagnosis. Are you surprised? Me neither. All right. How long is this? Do you want to read the whole thing or okay, short little read here. Says the Tavistock Gender Identity Clinic is facing legal action over claims that children were misdiagnosed. Let's see. Same thing. Misdiagnosed and rushed into transitioning at a young age. The clinic, which is being shut down by NHS England, was criticized by an independent review for the quality of care and services provided to patients, who were predominantly young teens expressing an interest in gender transitioning. Staff, patients, and parents have raised concerns that young people using the service were put on the pathway to transitioning too early and before they had been properly assessed. It is alleged children were, quote, rushed into taking life-altering puberty blockers without adequate consideration or proper diagnosis, with staff under pressure to adapt an unquestioning affirmative approach. Unquestioning affirmative approach. This, I don't understand how the notion of gender-affirming care ever got past the like, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me how you would have some type of therapy that is already determining what the answer is. As somebody who, as somebody who has a psychology degree, I learned about not just the way that the brain works, but the way that therapy is supposed to work. The way that you were supposed to diagnose issues with psychological issues and address those issues. And determining that this is the right answer, no matter who you are, is the opposite of everything that I was ever taught. So what do we do with that? Myron said, Eddie Izzard did his stand-up in drag. All these years later, who would have thought it would come to this? Rose says, I agree. Harley says, transphobic. I'm scared of brainwashing, suffering, mutilating, and mistreatment they've been put through. That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point. I'm afraid of what that person's mindset is. I don't have any ill will towards them, but I absolutely am concerned. Let's finish this up here. Says mass legal action is now being pursued by lawyers against the clinic named the Gender and Identity Development Service, which has treated 19,000 children with gender dysphoria since 1989. That's when I was born. Okay, let's go a little longer. Let me see anything here. Failures in their duty to care towards young adolescents. The head of product liability, Lisa Lunt, said, quote, while the provision of gender dysphoria treatment for children and young adolescents, where appropriate, is an important service, many have been let down by the Tavistock and Portman NHS Trust. We support the findings of the CAS review interim report and believe that there has been a real level of harm has been perpetrated towards patients who were rushed into taking life-altering. So, I mean, exactly what we thought was happening. Exactly what we thought was happening. Kids getting pushed into this before it is deemed to be appropriate, and surprise, surprise, people aren't too happy about it.
In London, which anyone who raised any concerns about this was immediately branded transphobic, which
of course
put
they
people
were
off raising concerns. But it turned out 97% of the young kids that were sent there for this gender reassignment turned out to have other issues, from autism to
I thought they were going to say like detransition, but of course, that's another sound I should add to the soundboard. Jake's, of course they had other issues. I would venture to say that the only reason they were there is because they had other issues. 97%. And that doesn't raise an eyebrow with you as scientists, psychologists, academics, and doctors? And these children's lives are they're not done, but they're changed in a way that can never be undone. For what? For being nice? Not wanting to hurt your feelings? To affirm who you are? All right, if that's the world you want to live in.
To depression, 97%. And what they really needed was an adult to be adult about this and say,
Yep.
well, before we irrevocably change your body and cut you to pieces, we're actually going to have a proper conversation about these other issues you've got, right?
Imagine that. Imagine having a conversation before mutilating your body. A lot of times, there's a lot of tattoo shops that won't even do same day, like walk-ins. Like you have to make an appointment and all this because they don't want you just making these rash decisions. And this is a tattoo. And now, as permanent as tattoos are, you can always get it lasered off. Shout out to Safe and Gentle Tattoo Removal. If you are in New Jersey and have a bad tattoo or know somebody with a bad tattoo, check out Safe and Gentle Tattoo Removal.com for the best laser tattoo removal in New Jersey. But even they will say, have some type of like, okay, are you sure you want to do this? Not all, but and certainly as you get older, when you have 18-year-olds go in, they'll usually be a little bit more cautious than if you're 30 and you're all tatted up and you go in there and you're probably like, all right, you're not gonna regret this. But especially first time tattoo, you're young. Even when they have, I think you can be as young as 16, and you can be with a parent in some states. And even then, or especially then, they're really like, hey, I know you want to do this, but you're a teenager and you don't know how you're going to feel for the rest of your life. And just thinking about that society-wide, the notion of getting a tattoo used to be, are you sure? How do you know you're going to want it forever? And now it's just gender-affirming care, no questions.
What? Exactly. But yeah, again, I think this is part of a broader attack on the notion of truth and an attack on institutions is really what it is in the end. Because the question is, why is it so important to teach kids who are 5, 6, 7 years old about being gender non-binary or trans? Again, there is an actual condition called gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder.
So the question is, why is it so important to teach the kids? Because it doesn't make sense. So you have to indoctrinate them. That's why. If it made sense, then you could just teach it to them when they're older. But because it doesn't make sense, then the people who are adults who fall for this are just dumber. But the children, they're children. So you get them while they're young. You get them while they're young.
And some people suffer from it. It's a very small percentage of the population. It is not 30, 40%, 20%, 10%, 5% of the population. But it does exist, obviously, and those people are suffering, and we should try to find ways to help them, whether that is in the medical context with regard to therapy or whether we're talking about just families treating them well. But that is not the same thing as indoctrinating entire generations of people and forcing all of society to go along with it. I mean, this is the real...
Notice the word, indoctrination.
Issue. Right. You're asking all of society to tell a lie in the name of sensitivity. Well, once you've done that with any issue, you can do that with pretty much every issue.
Well, we saw it with the ridiculous farce of the Roald Dahl books, all having this sensitivity reading, removing hundreds and hundreds of words and phrases from this iconic author. He's sold 300 million books. Suddenly they're rewriting this stuff, and some of the rewrites were so completely ridiculous. One
literally rewriting history.
Where tractors are referred to as black, they had to change that because somehow you can't have a black tractor. But what if the tractor's black?
One of the real problems here is that...
So before we go on, Harley said, it's not about how they will feel. It's making them understand the possible side effects and make them understand that after a certain point, you cannot undo it. So even if your feelings about it change, there's nothing you can do after that point. And it's the opposite is what they tell them. Like, oh, this is all reversible. Remember the clip from the gender affirming therapist in the What Is a Woman documentary. She's like, it's just like you're listening to a song and you pause it, and if you decide to press play, it picks up just where it left off, as if you had never. Lie detector determined that was a lie. But she's a doctor. I knew at the time that was BS. And I'm not a doctor, but that would have been the response from a lot of people who are in favor of this. Well, are you a doctor? Where's your medical degree? She's got a degree. Byron says that tattoo issue is similar to the 10-day cool-down period for weapons purchases, which I support for first-time buyers, not so much when it's your 43rd weapon. I mean, I'm not too familiar with the process of buying firearms. I would definitely like to be familiarized with it. I don't think that's going to happen in Jersey, though. So whenever you guys let me quit my job, then I'm probably moving to like Arizona or New Mexico or something so I can do all the stuff I want to do. Anyway, but it makes sense. And, you know, the issue of whether gun rights should be suppressed is there. But, you know, if we're not talking about that, then exactly. This is a perfect example. We have it with this. But when it comes to chopping off parts of your body, you want it? You feel good? You feeling like it? It's not a burger. You feeling like burgers? No. This is a life-altering decision.
That the modern context cannot understand why kids would read Roald Dahl. That really is the major issue.
Right.
So I read Roald Dahl to my kids. I just got through, I think, pretty much his entire
Right.
Which is that? Which books are Roald Dahl?
corpus with my 6-year-old, and
they're
kids,
extraordinary books.
Kids love it,
of course,
because the books are mean. Because the books are mean, right? The books are about life is a rough place where people are mean to you and social expectations are set for you, and people will talk to you
Which
about
is a great preparation for what the actual world is like.
Correct.
Right? I mean, whereas now you move to a place where even egg and spoon races have been banned in England, for example, at schools, because they encourage too much aggression amongst the kids who want to win. It's like,
spoon and egg races are too aggressive?
What?
How is that a thing? How is that a thing? But he said something before that I wanted to comment on, and I completely lost it when I heard about the spoon and egg races. Oh, so he's talking about the expectations for reality and setting you up for that reality. And so saying that, you know, the world is a mean place, and so kids like it.
Well, that's the argument. This is where like pornography, anti-porn people, and hate speech people tend to align. So they move away from like the conservative religious right to the more like
of course, you know, you had to say pornography. I had to be listening to a debate about prawn before this. So definitely not monetized. If you want to send in them super chats, please do help out. But he's talking about how the books will prepare these kids for real life. That is exactly what they're trying to do with these books. I add a new one to the list. We got Genderqueer, Just the Tip, and The Bluest Eye, which I believe is a longer novel. Not a novel, but a longer book than just like a kid's picture book. And when you present the world like that, you create the idea in these children's minds that this is real life. That is what they need to be prepared for. When it's not. Not that they won't, you know, they won't encounter those things, but those are not the things that you need to understand in order to make it in the world as an adult. Unlike having thick skin and being able to bounce back when you fall down or when you fail. Learning that other people are different, you know, okay, that's a good lesson, but once you get it, you kind of get it.
CRT people.
Oh, come on.
is a rough place where people are mean to you and social expectations are set for you, and people will talk to you
Which
about
is a great preparation for what the actual world is like.
Correct.
Right? I mean, whereas now you move to a place where even egg and spoon races have been banned in England, for example, at schools, because they encourage too much aggression amongst the kids who want to win. It's like, well, where does that leave you then? So kids get taught everybody wins. You all get a participation prize. Once you have that mindset, where's the preparation for the real world?
That's right. Well,
Exactly. And yes, Jess, that is what we're talking about. Harley said, you need to get that aggression out as a child so you can learn conflict resolution at a young age. Otherwise, when you grow up, you get anger issues that you don't know how to control and resolve. Exactly. And so if you're spending all the time, instead of learning about this, instead of learning about thinking critically and getting in control of your emotions and things like that, you're learning about the words that you're allowed to use and the words that you're not allowed to use. And if somebody uses this word, then they're a bad person. Or if your skin color is this, then you're oppressed. If it's that, then you're automatically a bad person, despite what are we doing? What are we doing? Why is it? I can't fathom how you could legitimately believe that this is what should be at the forefront of what we are teaching our children. It doesn't make sense. Hey, Divine and Rod coming in clutch. Thank you so much, brother. I think you can see him here, right? He's on his little, oh. All right. Morty, come here. Come here. Come. Oh, come here. We got a super chat. Yay. No? All right. Well, I'll leave it right here for him. Thank you so much, Divine and Rod. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Says Dog and Treats of Freedom. Request to do your. I didn't read that. Okay, Marty. See, this is a treat. See, when we get a super chat, then the dog gets a treat. So, Morty, I just need you to come lay down. I'm here. Okay. You are laying down there. Okay. And down there is different from up here. Okay. So, what I need you to do is come up here. Good. Thank you. That was so amazing. Up here is exactly where I wanted him. And now you can see him eat his treat. Good boy. Yay. Thank you so much, brother. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's a war against reality. And the reality is that, for example, in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, being fat is not as good for you as not being fat, right? If you're Augustus Gloop, it turns out that you probably shouldn't overeat.
That's fat-phobic.
So we're just going to cut the word fat.
Right, but the sensitivity reader said...
They called it enormous, right?
Yes, you couldn't be fat, but you could be enormous. What the hell are you talking about?
You can't wipe that away. But again, I think that's setting up a predicate for a broader ideological shift, which is any problems you experience in your life are through no volition of your own or any action of your own. You're not responsible for your own actions. Society at large is responsible for your actions for setting up unrealistic standards of beauty, or society is responsible for setting up some sort of sensitivity to you as a human being.
What about the damage it's done, for example? I think a lot of damage to being male, being a man, being masculine, that everything is now characterized as toxic masculinity.
Absolutely. I mean, the effect on men, and by the way, by proxy on women, because it turns...
Oh my goodness. Welcome to the Uncle Junior Network. Thank you so much. Morty, we got another one. Come here. Morty, come. You want a treat? Come here. Thank you so much, brother. Every super chat goes to a treat for Morty. Thank you. And the new sponsor of the stream. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. No comment, no question, just pure love of the game. Welcome to the party. We are just checking out Ben Shapiro on the Piers Morgan Uncensored show. Welcome.
Turns out that women actually kind of like masculine men.
Of course.
In fact, all of human procreation is rooted in this essential biological fact. The destruction of men in the West is the great story of the last 40 years, which is men basically somehow got the patriarchy was so clever that they somehow convinced women that sexual liberation was actually the most wonderful thing for women. But as it turns out, it actually backfired, and it ended up destroying men, because men do need marriage. Men need roles. Men need actual things to do in the course of their lifetime. And the thing...
That's a great way to put it. Instead of uplifting women, all it did was hurt men. It didn't not uplift women, but at the expense of men. And that is that's an amazing point. I've never heard it put like that, and I really like that. Let's talking about, not just feminism specifically, but all the ideas that go along with it.
The most wonderful thing for women. But as it turns out, it actually backfired, and it ended up destroying men, because men do need marriage. Men need roles. Men need actual things to do in the course of their lifetime. And the thing that most men did for virtually all of human history was get married, have kids, protect and defend your wife and kids. That was the role. And
that was all we wanted, and that was all y'all wanted, ladies. And it seemed to work out. But then everybody has to be a strong, independent woman. Like, I know that there's bad guys out there, but the perception of what percentage of the population, of the male population, is the type of guy that you need to worry about, leaving you destitute and all that stuff. It's just, it ain't like that. Sure, things can happen, but is that worth buying a dog and literally dying alone when not even trying? I mean, you tell me.
Trained to do this from the time that you were a small kid. It's what, I have 3 kids going on 4. I train my kids to do this now. I talk to them about how many kids do you want to have? What kind of job do you want to have? How do you want to bring up those kids? They're small. You train kids to be adults, because you know what kids want? They want to be adults. And what they want is a path from how I get to point A, being a child, to being an adult. But
they want a path from how do I get to point A, being a child, to point B, being an adult. Another great line there. Harley says, it didn't do anything for women, really. The only people it really benefited were simps. Facts. I mean, it definitely, allowed women in the short term to live more individually, which I think in general is good. It just went too far. This is why we can't have nice things. This is why we can't have nice things, because everything just goes too damn far.
But we as a society have completely destroyed that path because we've said that adulting is now, number one, a verb. And number two, we've said that being an adult is somehow no longer required of you. Society is going to take care of you. No matter what problem you have, it's everybody else's job to
not just society, the government.
Fix all of the rules of society around you.
Can you see why people like Andrew Tate got such traction?
Yes. So what I've said about Andrew Tate is that I would say that 75% of Andrew Tate's diagnoses,
let me get a top G in the chat,
of the problem are pretty correct.
Yeah, I agree.
And then I would say that a lot of his prescriptions are completely wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So he will say men have lost their role in the world, and then what he will model is cam girls. It's like, well, that's not actually the solution. But what you're saying about the problem of men losing their role and men needing to be masculine and men needing to want to win and men needing to cultivate an ability to go out and succeed and thrive in the world, all of that is 100% true.
Spot on. And I think there's a lot of advice that came from Andrew Tate that was, like he said, was good advice at its core, but especially when it was distilled through people like Sneeko. We had a lot of fun watching Sneeko, but the message didn't translate, and it's because of how easily the message was misconstrued. And I think that is a big criticism. And when Andrew Tate was on Piers Morgan, it absolutely he absolutely talked about that. And the hope was that we didn't get another one yet. The hope was that after all of that settled down, if he were to be uncanceled, obviously at this time we didn't know he was going to get arrested, that he would come back and address the same points that he wanted, but just in a little bit more palatable of a presented in a little bit more palatable way. Hey, we got Splits in the building. What's good? Welcome to the party. Glad you are here. Vine Rod said, very important point, Ben. The role of parent is to parent, not be your child's friend. Yeah, free top G. Harambe did nothing wrong. FC didn't on building 7. There you go. I like how you put that. Harley said, yeah, wishing to be an adult was the worst wish ever. All I wanted was to stay up at night all night, watch cartoons, and have limitless snacks. I can do that, but not all the other BS that came with it. Yeah, I mean, if life could have stopped in like, if I could just be frozen in time as like a freshman in college, where like there's stuff that you got to do, there's responsibilities, but you can also kind of just shrug them off. It's not a big deal. But you have all of this freedom, and it's so new that the novelty of being able to do stuff and the lack of responsibility that you have, oh man, that was best time in my life. If you're going to go to college, which these days is certainly not the same thing it was back in my day, but definitely take advantage of the whole college experience, because otherwise there ain't much there for you.
I just think that he himself on a personal level wasn't providing a model of that. To me, a model of that is a guy who is married, who has kids, who lives in the community, who betters the community he lives in.
That's a great point. The next, because we had Kevin Samuels, and then unfortunately he passed away, RIP. And it seemed that we needed another person to lead the Red Pill community. Without that, the Red Pill community has fallen apart. But before that point, like in its part of its destruction, was the fact that Andrew Tate was the top G, pun intended. I think that he's good for, I'm comfortable saying he's good for society, but I also think that it would be better if he was not the biggest name in the space. He needs to be himself, and there needs to be somebody else who cares more about the perception of the entire community, if that community is to come back, succeed, whatever you want. And I don't see anybody who can do that. And especially with him gone, when like Red Pill's dead. Not the information, mind you. The information, the ideas, those are still there. Those are things that we need to keep alive. But I don't think that we need a little club to talk about them. I think that we can just keep those as part of the other values that we hold in life. That along with, freedom and liberty and safety and these things, we also have an understanding that men are this and women are that, and all of these things. Harley said, I think Andrew helped give young men a direction to look towards. Yeah, exactly. As Shapiro was saying earlier, that there's a lack of men in those positions that young men can look up to. So I certainly don't blame the 15 to 18, 20-year-old group for being in love with Andrew Tate. Being a little older, you can see that okay, that's not like a lifestyle that I can emulate by just doing you ain't gonna be that, you ain't gonna be the top G. But again, just taking little bits of what he was saying and the conversations he was having really outlined a lot of points and realities that just weren't talked about unless they were in the context of a Fresh and Fit or DJ Academics or Donovan Sharp or any of these frauds who are, little baby men who just happen to be tall and have tall and strong and happen to look decent, and except for Fresh. Ooh, yikes. And that's enough to convince young men that you're somebody that they should follow. And unfortunately, it's not. So again, I go back to the idea that we should fold these values of the red pill values just into our societal values. That you don't have to be in this club to talk about these things. You don't have to be in this club to believe these things. You just be a person and acknowledge, oh, okay, yeah, that's a thing. I heard about that from somebody who calls themselves red pill or whatever, but it doesn't make it any less true.
Hires people, creates a business. These are the things that, historically speaking, did define manhood, and now they no longer define manhood, and men are left
I think
bereft.
that you can chart the moment of deterioration for the moment James Bond started crying. It's like, you take even Bond and emasculate him. It's like he has to be in touch with his feelings. Why? Why can't he just shoot people and drink martinis and seduce women? And what's
I'm with that.
wrong with that?
Right. Well,
Nothing's wrong with that.
Again, a cultural move, and you're right, against masculinity in pretty much every sphere, and the conflation of masculinity, which is good, with toxic masculinity. All masculinity is bad, and so we need to feminize society overall. We don't need to feminize society overall any more than we need to masculinize society overall. What we need.
I disagree. We absolutely do need to masculinize society. The fact that toxic masculinity has become a thing, as I say over and over and over, there is no such thing as toxic masculinity. There is just behavior that manifests when there is not enough masculinity. So absolutely, at least the men in society need to be masculinized. I think the women are plenty masculinized, but absolutely we need that. I think that women need to be more feminized and men need to be more masculine. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. Right? Nothing wrong with that.
Need is for men to be men and women to be women. That doesn't mean
but that's exactly what you're saying. If we're saying women are acting too much like men and men are acting too much like women, well then you are saying that there needs to be more feminization in certain areas and more masculinization in certain areas.
That women are barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. As I've said many times, my wife is a doctor, right? What it does mean,
yeah, you never shut up about it, Ben,
is that there are essential qualities to being a woman that are different from many of the essential qualities to being a man.
So
and these are important.
Here's one part of all this debate which I disagree with you about. So you don't agree with gay marriage or with gay parenting. I don't want to misquote you, but I think that's your position.
That's interesting. So let's do a poll on this one. Let's stick with parenting. All right. New poll. I am very interested to hear what you guys have to say. Is gay parenting okay? Well, let's hear what Ben has to say about it.
Now, I would say that reading the rest of your views on stuff, you're very about fairness and equality for all, right? How does that fit in there? Why shouldn't two men who are gay actually be able to bring a child up, why shouldn't they if they want to get married? How is it equal or fair for them to be excluded?
So
I agree with that statement, or I agree with the setup of that question. I don't think that I think that's framed in a way that if you legitimately have an issue with it, then you should be able to answer that, and it shouldn't. You shouldn't get defensive about that. That if he does, that's a bad sign. But let's see.
we can take those issues one by one. So marriage is a societal institution. The question is which relationships society chooses to sanctify. So I'm not in favor of, for example, laws that criminalize homosexual activity or two men living together or two men making a lifelong commitment to one another in whatever context they wish to do that. What I'm objecting to is the idea that marriage as a term is equally applicable to relationships that are designed to produce the future generation and then raise them, as opposed to two people who love each other. The fundamental redefinition of marriage actually happened before same-sex marriage, within heterosexual marriage, away from the purpose of heterosexual marriage is man, woman, child, to two people who love each other. Once you do that, then that obviously is going to encompass things like two men or two women. But
that's fair. That's absolutely fair. If it's about the semantics, and you're saying that this word marriage, what that means is the binding of a man and a woman to make a child. And it's not about who you love. It's not about happiness. It's not about any of these things. Okay, that's fair. Now, do I believe that that is a belief based in something strong enough to make that legislation? No, I do not. That's just a personal opinion on what you think should qualify as marriage. I'm trying to think if he's going to go down the road of what do they call it, civil unions? But let's see here.
It has no limiting principle because then it could be any group of people who love each other. And I don't think that the government has a fundamental role in propagating relationships other than ones that have externalities that benefit society. And the chief externality that benefits society from marriage is having.
I know it's more nuanced, guys. I purposely make them vague.
Children and children raised largely with their biological parents. As far
You can always comment like Divine and Rod is doing. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
As far as gay parenting, what I've said is that there are sort of hierarchies of options, meaning that the ideal is man, woman, child. And then, if you can't fulfill that ideal, then there's obviously gradations. I would rather that two gay men are raising a child than have that child be in an orphanage, for example. So it's not as though the alternatives are always, the ones that I would want.
But shouldn't they be allowed to have the same just rights in law to what straight couples would have?
Well, I mean,
it's
more benefits than rights, right? If you're talking about a right, what you're talking about is a government non-intervention with particular activity. Now, when it comes to children, we obviously do things to protect children or provide them with
I've seen gay parents who are fantastic parents. I've seen gay parents who I think...
So, this is in relation to the marriage thing? It's danger because people become dependent on each other, therefore endangering the feminist leftist rhetoric. I'm not sure what that's in response to. But Demiron said, wait, it's more nuanced. I'm against adoption. Really? Even though single dads, gay couples, grandparents, and wolf packs all raise children better than single moms. So why are you against adoption? That's very interesting. I've never heard that before.
Are not fantastic parents.
Sure.
I've seen a lot of straight parents who are awful, and I've seen some great straight parents. I don't really see any particular distinction about what combination you have as your parents.
So I do, and the reason I do is...
You know what? Give me 1 second. I missed one part of this, and I just want to... I just want to make sure I'm with you. So we're going to do this. I'm just going to listen to it.
Relationships other than ones that have externalities that benefit society. And the chief externality that benefits society from marriage is having children and children raised...
Come on.
Largely with their biological parents. As far as gay parenting, what I've said is that there are sort of hierarchies of options, meaning that the ideal is man, woman, child. And then, if you can't fulfill that ideal, then there's obviously gradations. I'd rather that two gay men are raising a child than have that child be in an orphanage, for example. So it's not as though the alternatives are always, the ones that I would want.
Shouldn't they be allowed to have the same just rights in law to what straight couples would have?
Well, I mean, it's more benefits than rights, right? If you're talking about right, what you're talking about is a government non-intervention with particular activity. Now,
Okay. Just wanted to get what I missed. All right. We're back.
When it comes to children, we obviously do things to protect children or provide them with...
I've seen gay parents who are fantastic parents. I've seen gay parents who I think are not fantastic parents.
Sure.
I've seen a lot of straight parents who are awful.
We're at 50-50.
I've seen some great straight parents. I don't really see any particular distinction about what combination you have as your parents?
So I do. And the reason I do is because, again, I think there is a fundamental distinction between woman and man. And what that means is that mothers and fathers are both necessary. And so the idea that two men can simply supplant a man and a woman on a generic average level,
well,
I don't think
is true. They're supplanting. What they're doing, this is what they are. I mean, you don't think that gay people become gay, presumably, right?
Well, I mean, I think that the notion that everyone who is gay was always gay from the time that they were born, I don't think that the data back that per se, because we are seeing.
I'm not familiar with. Let's just say I don't think. I don't know. Do you think that a lot of people agree with that? I feel like we've kind of gotten to the point. Go lay down, Morty. We've gotten to the point where it's been accepted by and large that you're gay or you're not. In the same way that, anybody doesn't choose to be straight. Does anybody here believe that being gay is an option? Just like something that you could like, because there's certainly an option to follow your desires or to not follow your desires. But when I say somebody is gay, I'm talking about their desires, not what their behavior is. Very interesting. All right, so the poll ends at 60-40 saying yes. All right. So, Jess has got to run. Thank you so much for partying with us. Again, check out her channel. The link is in the chat there somewhere. Thank you for stopping by, Jess. You have a good one. So yeah, okay, so run around saying that. So, I had said something along the lines of women and men both should be more masculine and feminine. So I was saying men need to be more feminine and men need to be more masculine and women need to be more feminine. So it's dangerous because people become dependent on each other and therefore endangering the feminist leftist rhetoric. I mean, yeah, I guess that's true. I guess they need they're strong, independent women. So again, Divining Rod said that he's against adoption, even though single dads, gay couples, grandparents, and wolfpacks are all better than single moms. Says I'm against same-sex adoption because no one has the right to impose that on a child. And by virtue of being gay, you forfeited that part of your life. Although gays make great parents. But what forfeited what part of their life? The part of having to, a mother and a father? Because if we're talking about adoption, then they already don't have a mother and father, or at least a good mother and father. Harley said, I don't think you're born gay or straight. It's a preference you develop during maturity. Okay, fair. But the heart of the question is, do you choose that preference? Or are preferences just what they are? My opinion is that you don't choose your preferences. Whatever you come to prefer is your preference. So Divine Rod is just waiting for it to pop up in StreamYard here saying having kids. You forfeited that part of your life. Oh, by virtue of being gay. So because somebody that doesn't make sense to me. So because somebody is gay and straightness is needed to create a child, that straightness was already there. That's why there's a child who needs to be adopted. So you want to punish not only the child and keep them in an orphanage or foster homes or potentially bad man and wife couple because people decided to get married and they're same sex? What? That's not a good argument, bro.
Rising levels for
unless I'm misunderstanding you. Please clear it up if I am, but that's not a good argument.
Example across society of people identifying in a particular way. So there is some fluidity to sexual behavior and sexual activity. There's less fluidity probably to sexual orientation.
You assume that the majority,
yeah, but sure,
majority of gay people, male and female, are born gay. Right? If you take that as a basic premise, the majority are, which I absolutely believe. I'm just not sure how.
Yeah, I like what Harley said. Because I wasn't born with the probably the capacity to have romantic feelings for a woman, or at that, an age appropriate girl when I was that age. So that develops, but the preference of who I ended up liking the very first time was not a matter of choice. It was a matter of, it is what it is.
Oh,
So let's back this up. What was he saying? What was he saying there?
There's less fluidity probably to sexual orientation.
assume that the majority,
But yeah, but sure.
the majority of gay people, male and female, are born gay, right? If you take that as a basic premise, the majority are, which I...
And again, just to underline, we're saying using the born gay, meaning just that the preferences are not chosen.
I absolutely believe. I'm just not sure how it's fair or equitable to deny them the same rights to their relationship status or to parenting that you would give to straight people.
So again, I really don't think that has anything to do with being born or not born in a particular way. I think even if they were not born in a particular way, that the government should not criminalize private activity. What I do think is that if we are talking about the benefits that a government is giving in order to propagate childbearing and rearing within the context of the biological parents, which is, again, what marriage originally was supposed to be, which is why marriage was government-sponsored.
What would you do if one of your kids, they're all very young, you have no idea, but if one of your kids turned out to be gay?
Did anybody know where he was going with that? Like, he kind of just rambled on about a bunch of stuff and didn't really say anything. So I think that I'm glad Piers jumped in with a more specific example. Saying if one of your kids turned out to be gay,
wanted to get married, would you be tough enough
I mean,
to say?
I think he's going to say that he would tell them that he would be against it, but because they're his children, he would, find a way to deal with it or something along those lines.
You can't do that.
I mean, I would oppose that so religion. So again, marriage exists in a few different.
Religious,
yeah, I mean, religious. So marriage exists in a couple of different iterations. One is religious marriage, which is kind of what I care about, and then there is governmental sanctioned marriage, which is a public policy question.
Right.
When it comes to religious marriage, no, I'm not in favor of my religion sanctifying same-sex couples, specifically because, again, my religion propagates the idea that man, woman, and child is the model for families.
So here's the solution, bro. Don't marry a dude. So Adviron said that's not what I said. Not necessarily my position. It's more of a viewpoint. So so what is your position? Why are you? Connect the dots for me, because I understand you're saying if you, by virtue of being gay, you don't have the ability to have children. Agreed. But there's adoption. So what is the reason that those people should not adopt? What is the reason that child should stay without a family? Specifically the child. I don't understand why it makes sense to, because even if you're not, trying to, you are punishing the child by not giving them a life with two parents who would go through the process and very likely be provide them with a better situation than they're in. So if it's not your position, what is your position? That's what I'm curious about.
Let's take a break. I want to come back and talk to you about the big question for Republicans: Trump v. DeSantis.
Trump v. DeSantis.
Is Biden going to run again? And does age matter? Back to Piers Morgan Uncensored, live from New York City. Ben Shapiro is still with me, live and uncensored. Ben, you got a fourth child coming along. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I have 4 as well.
Getting in
Disturbing
cheeks.
report in the New York Post today that Peppa Pig is having disturbing for you, not for me, having a weird effect on American children. They're all beginning to speak in English accent. Has this happened?
Yo, I can attest, as I'm sure anybody who has taken a trip to England, that accent is so contagious. It is so contagious to the point where I was there. I was like 16 years old. I went with my family, and just being in England, everybody's obviously speaking with an English accent, and I started every single thing that I would say, I started just thinking in the back of my mind, like, what would that sound like with an English accent? It's like, oh, I'd like a cookie. Oh, I'd like a cookie. Like, what am I doing? It's so contagious. It really is.
Happened to you, and how do you feel about this?
I mean, it hasn't happened to me. I do feel like this is a subversive British attempt to reverse the results of the American Revolution. This would be the second in the course of the last few years. You sent us Prince Harry, apparently, in an attempt to conquer all. And he and his wife, she was going to become president. He was going to become first lady or first gentleman.
Can you even imagine of those two? We're going to come to those two in the last block because I can't get there before then. It's just too distressing. Let's talk about American politics. Trump v. DeSantis is interesting because Trump still wields a lot of power in the Republican Party. But DeSantis is pretty nearly half his age. He's got all this dynamism now, very successful in the midterms, really doing a good job in Florida.
So as listening off the differences between the two, I don't know if you heard Trump did some type of speech somewhere about going to what was he talking about? It was generally talking about how Biden's not taking care of America and getting into all these wars and I was so strong, we didn't get any wars and all that stuff. And it was the first time I really heard him talking in a way that wasn't about the past, about how this should have happened and that should have happened, and I mean he brought up like what happened under his administration, but he was far more looking to the future as this is what I'm going to do for you, a lot more, and he was doing it. Remember that one of the biggest and earliest criticisms of Trump was that he was not presidential, and the speech that I heard, it was rather presidential. So if he can toe that line and be Trump and still be that bombastic, I do better than anybody else, we got less wars than anybody else, okay? If he can be that guy and not trigger the TDS, I think I would be all in. Because that's the only thing that has really held me back from supporting him is how crazy people get just by hearing his name, hearing his voice, seeing his face. I think it is crazy. I'm going to back to this 1 second, but we're talking with Divine and Ron. He said the state doesn't have power to bestow gay couples on a child and all that baggage that may come with it, as opposed to the baggage of, I mean, I guess I hear what you're saying, that, my comparison to this is, we've talked about the trolley problem. And I always say, if you're not familiar, there's a runaway trolley. There's 5 people stuck on the track. There's a lever that you can pull to get the train onto a different track where there's one person stuck. That's all. You can't do anything else. And so the question is, do you let the 5 people die or do you let the one person die? And I'm of the position that I wouldn't pull the lever, because I am not going to bestow, to use Divine and Rod's word, bestow a death sentence on somebody who didn't have it. If those I didn't make that train do anything. I didn't put those people there. I didn't, whatever. But once I'm pulling the lever, now I am putting that one person in danger. It's the same exact question as if you have a doctor and they have 5 patients who are, going to die if you take their organs out, but one person is going to live. Well, of course, you wouldn't just save the 5 people and kill somebody who has all their functioning organs. Did I say that right? You know what I mean? You could save 5 people. They all need organs, and you can take it out of one healthy person. It's the same concept. You're not going to bestow the death sentence. So I understand the context of what you're saying, but this seems very esoteric to me, in the sense that I agree with the notion that whatever the X factor of having gay parents is, that is different than having straight parents. And I understand that difference is or at least can be very meaningful. I just think the interest of the child is not about whether they are whether the state is bestowing this, that, or the other. It's just about what is best for the child. So even if it's not ideal for the child to be with a gay couple, and it would be ideal for to be with their biological mother and father, well, again, if they're up for adoption, that's already not the case. So if the government's there to do anything, why not help the citizens, specifically the children? Byron goes on to say, so I have a personal opinion. Happy orphan kids find families. And a law-based perspective, guys, by virtue of their choice, which prevents... I don't know what this says. Can you restate this one? It sounds like something good, but I don't know what it says. So Harley said, personally, I would prefer if children were adopted in a man-woman stable household. But if a child has an opportunity to be in a good home, then I don't think it matters. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I understand the point about the state doesn't have the power to bestow gay couples on a child. I don't agree with the phrasing, but I understand what you're saying. I just think what is best for the child supersedes whether or not that is true.
How do you see this playing out? Because they've got to work it out, I think, to have a success in 2024.
I'm not sure that they have to work it out. I don't think President Trump is really capable of working it out with people he sees as potential or real rivals to him. That's sort of not his.
Did DeSantis
MO.
beat him, do you think?
Yes. And I think the reason that DeSantis can beat him is because Donald Trump is very charming when he's winning, and when he is losing, he just seems whiny. And that's a real problem for him. So after,
and again, this goes back to what I was just saying, that I started hearing him not sound whiny. So I don't know. And the other thing is that because I like DeSantis, I don't want them. It's like in the UFC when you got two stars, you want to see what happens if they fight, but you don't want either of them to lose. And in this case, DeSantis is young. And Trump is old, but he's much more with it than Biden. And so if we can get, them working together, or at least Trump and then DeSantis, I think if they're to run together, then they're both going to sully each other's names by being so good and having to, eke out being better. They're going to have to play politics. So I would just rather see, I would hope that either DeSantis runs as his VP, which I don't see happening, or, just stay out until 2028. I don't know. Unless Trump does some crazy stuff, and then it's like, okay, this gives us a reason to be like, all right, Trump, you had your chance. Nope, done. That's right.
2020, when he maintained that he won and he had not, I think a lot of Republicans were willing to grant him the premise, which was, okay, you pulled off this miracle in 2016. You're the only man who can win. So how could he possibly lose in 2020? If you say you won, okay, fine. And then the 2021 elections happen in Georgia, and essentially he contributes to the loss of 2 Senate seats in Georgia. Yeah. And then the 2022 elections happen, and pretty much all of his hand-picked candidates in the Senate then proceed to lose. Yeah. And a lot of Republicans look at this and they say, well, listen, we have a lot of warm feelings toward you personally, but we can't keep losing to these people. And so we need something new. We need somebody who wins. And
there is a lot of conservatives that are going to 1000% agree with everything Ben just said. But there's a lot of conservatives who would not. And I don't know which number is bigger. We'll be able to see, because early on, people like Ben Shapiro were not in favor of Trump at all. They were making fun of him just like the rest of us. But eventually, because it was expedient, they got on board. So knowing that can happen, knowing that has happened, it makes me want to, have the right answer, and not just to be right, but to forge the best path forward.
And so when they look at the board, the person who's putting the most W's on the board right now is DeSantis in Florida. I mean, in the same election where Republicans wildly underperformed, there was a red wave, but it only hit one state. It hit the state where I happen to live. It hit Florida, and it was a tsunami.
And I've been.
But Trump wasn't in politics, so what is it that you would expect him to do? That sounds like a confirmation bias thing right there. Like, well, DeSantis had all these wins. Yeah, when Trump wasn't doing anything. Again, I don't necessarily have a dog in the fight at this point. I just don't like when I hear logical fallacies.
Been to Florida a lot recently, and they love him in Florida.
Oh yeah, I mean, you've got Democrats who are voting for him and independents who are voting for him. He took a state that he'd won in 2018 by 0.4 percentage points, and he won it by 20 points in the last election cycle.
Joe Biden, if he
I think I missed it. So before we go on, Admire said, so I have a personal opinion. Oh yeah, you said that. Happy so on and so forth. So then to take it a step further. State adopts you out to a same-sex couple. It goes horrible. As the child could go back and say the state caused this by adopting you out to a non-traditional family. I mean, I'm certainly not a lawyer, but I would bet a lot of money that this is not a something that would go forth in court, because if anything, it would go back on the adoptions agency. The state adopts you, something goes horrible. As the child, you can go back. And so even if that is the case, let's take this for granted. Let's say we'll give you that. So this happens, state adopts you out to a same-sex couple, and it goes horrible. And so then as a child, you then go back to the state and you say the state caused this. Okay, what's wrong with that? Obviously, the intention was not to give them to a bad situation. So unless you're saying that it goes horrible because they were same sex, which you would have to prove, is because they are same sex and not just because they are bad people or bad parents. I don't really know if this is a lawsuit or a, what's the word? I don't know if this is a case that would hold any water. So to the it said 3 minutes ago and it said 50-50 and then it said 3 votes. So on the poll, please hit the poll, guys. Harley says DeSantis could beat Trump, but I don't know if he's the best option. Yes, he's willing to make changes, but the laws he's passed are rushed and not well written. That's definitely an interesting point. I think the first thing I would think of would be the nature of why he passed those things so quickly, and because of how much he was fighting against. But I don't really know that. I'm just guessing there. And if you say if he's not the best option, then who do you think is the best option? Baron says state grants all that power. The same would apply to traditional families as well. So then what are we talking about? If the same applies to traditional families, then we're not talking about anything to do with gay couples.
He runs.
Man,
Democrats who are voting for him and independents who are voting for him. He took a state that he'd won in 2018 by 0.4 percentage points, and he won it by 20 points in the last election cycle.
Joe Biden, if he runs again and wins, he would be 86 by the end of that term. Is he? I mean, he's already the oldest president in history and showing a lot of signs of mental decline.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Is that wait? Is that a real possibility? Is that a real possibility that we get another supposed 4 years? Because I don't think he's going to make 4 years, especially as a president. Another Biden term? Is that even a real possibility? I feel like it could be. That's scary. That is scary.
Be kind about it. I mean, he fell over on the plane again today. I don't know if you got that clip, but it's just when you see these moments, I think we've got to hear.
I think he fell twice, right? Whoop!
It's hard to watch.
In Europe, it is hard to watch because this happens quite regularly, and it's not just physical stumbles; it's verbal as well. Do you think he's going to run again?
Yes, I think they'll have to staple him upright on a horse and run him, and they will, because I don't think that they want the internecine warfare of a bunch of also-rans. I mean, backing him up is the worst politician ever cobbled together in a laboratory, Kamala Harris.
I mean, she is awful.
I mean, she makes Hillary Clinton look like the apotheosis of charm, and she's backing him up. And then you have Pete Buttigieg, who is busily destroying his own reputation over this East Palestine train spill. I mean,
didn't even go. Not until Trump was there. I hated Trump for so long. Y'all made me not hate Trump. It is what it is. Not y'all, but y'all.
How he could not go down there for 3 weeks? It's just absolutely breathtaking. So Donald Trump has gone down there today just to, be the hero. And you think, where is the transport secretary?
Especially if you have presidential aspirations, the way that
Buttigieg keeps saying, I'm planning on going. Well, when?
Right. It's not that hard.
I want to get around to it. There's I got some stuff to do. Errands to run. Excuse me. Harley said, if I voted, I would be leaning towards Trump. If DeSantis cleaned up his laws and made them more thorough, or made more of them through, then I would vote for him. The last thing we need is half-ass laws passed. Well, I agree with you there. Definitely agree with you there. And I've kind of been waiting to see when is the other shoe going to drop? When is the other shoe going to drop? Because, being aware of how this stuff is playing out and the fact that he is being a typical politician while kind of also, bucking the system a little bit, I'm waiting for the scandal or the something. And I mean, if this is all it is, I'm all right with that. 'Cause I don't think that if you are in that position, that these laws would be half-assed. I think the pace that the federal government was moving with so many of these things, it was a reaction to that created these in your words, half-assed laws. But again, I don't hold me to that. I don't know that for sure.
I mean, you just go.
Yes.
I mean, but
Get on a plane. And you
Nobody
turn
else is going to answer the poll. Come on.
up and you know.
it's always a bad time when you know the name of the transportation secretary, right? There are certain
Right.
departments in the government where you just don't know anybody's name. Transportation is one of them. But after presiding over the supply chain problems and then the railroad strike and then
Extraordinary.
the East Palestine issue and the airlines, I mean, he's had a bad run here.
Bad
And so if you're the Democratic Party and you're looking at the next batch of people,
I think he's done himself in over this.
I think they've got a real problem on their hands. And so they
He's
have
got
to,
no
it's got to be Biden.
antennae for the right thing to do.
So that's a good point, that even if they wanted, and they do want, to put somebody other than Biden up, who do you got? Who do you got? This is what happens when you have decades and decades and decades and decades of voting for the lesser of two evils. Without Trump, we would probably see like a Jeb Bush or somebody in as the nominee, and Hillary Clinton probably would have won. And then what do you do? Both parties would have the issue of like, well, I mean, we can't really do any worse, but we sure as shit can't do any better. Hodge says, who knows though? Maybe once he moves into the federal level, he'll get better at writing them. That's what yeah, I agree with you. I agree.
Nikki Haley has put her hat in the ring and was immediately the victim of an extraordinary onslaught from Don Lemon, who happened to...
Did you guys see this? Oh, man, Don Lemon. I hope he doesn't get fired just so we get more Don Lemon clips. I hope they show it. If they don't, we are going to check that
Take
out.
my old office at CNN, actually. Not that I hold a torch to that, obviously. But here's the clip of what Don Lemon said about Nikki Haley, 51 years old.
Nikki Haley isn't in her prime. Sorry.
So the context of, I'm sure most of you have seen this, but if you haven't, the context is they had watched Nikki Haley's ad saying that she was running for president and that talking about old politicians and out of their prime and so on and so forth. And this is what Don Lemon said.
Lemon said about Nikki Haley, who's 51 years old.
Nikki Haley isn't in her prime. Sorry. When a woman is considered to be in her prime in her 20s and 30s and maybe 40s.
What are you
That's
talking?
He's like, sorry, she's not in her prime, sorry. And then he's like, wait a minute, who am I talking to? Oh yeah, this isn't my own show.
Wait.
That's not according to me. so
Prime
don't-
for what?
It depends. I mean, it's just like prime. If you look it up, it'll. If you Google when is a woman in her prime, it'll say 20s, 30s, and 40s.
If you Google it, when is a woman in her prime? She asked, she's on CNN on the morning show and asked the right question. In her prime for what? Well, I don't know. It depends. Exactly. Her prime. You're saying she's in her prime to be the president at 20 years old? Psst. You can't run for president until you're 35.
Can you imagine two women either side of you and working at CNN with people like Christiane Amanpour and all these great journalists, all by his yardstick, way past their prime now? I mean, just the crassness of it.
Well, I mean, I do love the gay man explaining to the two women what a woman in her prime looks like. It's like, dude,
and he Googled it.
He Googled it. He had to Google it. So there was that. But yeah, what is amazing about
Well, CNN, fact check. He Googled it.
this, as sort of a broader trend, is the amount of hatred that Haley is picking up from the left side of the media, which I think is a tell. So the media have said for years and years and years that they want Trump out. Trump has to go. He's a fascist threat to the United States. And then the minute...
So what he said was the fact that the left is going so hard against Nikki Haley is a tell. And brought up how badly they want to get rid of Trump.
That a candidate throws her hat in the ring against Trump. She's the first declared candidate against Trump. And the minute that happens, all of a sudden, she's a
white
token.
supremacist.
She's too old for the job at 51, and all which suggests to me that a lot of these people have been, crying into their soup a little bit over Donald Trump. They really want him
But
back.
you think ultimately the race will be DeSantis?
Wait, didn't he say from the left? He's been getting attacks from the left? How does that mean that people want Trump? Because clearly the left does not want Trump.
against Biden?
I think that that's the highest.
I'm going to back that up. I want to make sure.
She's too old for the job at 51.
Yeah, wait. Yeah, you said the left.
About this as sort of a broader trend is the amount of hatred that Haley is picking up from the left side of the media, which
Yeah, the left side of the media. And then he says they want to get rid of Trump. Am I stupid?
I think is a tell. So the media have said
It's a
for
tell
years and
from
years
the
and
left.
years that they want Trump out. Trump has to go. He's a fascist threat
Okay.
to the United States. And then the minute that a candidate throws her hat in the ring against Trump, she's the first declared candidate against Trump. And the minute that happens, all of a sudden, she's a
White
token.
supremacist.
She's too old for the job at 51.
So what that says to me, if that's a tell from the left that they're attacking her, despite the fact that they want someone other than Trump, means that either they think that she's worse than Trump. Yeah, that would be that's the only thing I could think of. I don't know, let's see.
And which suggests to me that a lot of these people have been, crying into their soup a little bit over Donald Trump. They really want him
But
back.
you think ultimately
See, he just said the two opposite things. He said people from the left, they want Trump out. And there's a lot of people who have been crying in their soup about wanting Trump back. Am I stupid or did he just not make sense?
the race will be DeSantis against Biden?
I think that that's the highest likelihood.
And you think who wins that?
I think DeSantis wins that race.
Yeah.
I think that Biden's been cruising for a bruising, and he narrowly avoided it in 2020 because the Republicans decided to raid the local homeless shelter for candidates.
Let's come back. We've got to finally.
I love this. How it says, I don't want her for president simply because she's a woman. But that's me. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Get to them. Harry and Meghan and the South Park devastating destruction of everything they represent.
Oh, I didn't see this.
Which the whole world's been chuckling over. We'll talk about that after the break.
Have you guys been following South Park? I haven't followed South Park in years because first of all, I don't even know where to find it. And secondly, whenever they switched over to this very serialized thing, like in the early days of South Park, an episode was an episode. And they would do an episode about a thing, and the next episode would, like traditional sitcoms, it would reset and it would just be a new episode. And then at some point in like maybe 2010s area, they started doing the like with the member berries. There was all these things and inside jokes, and so I didn't realize that they were doing that, and I maybe missed a couple of episodes, just a few. And then by the time I got back into it, I'm like, what is going on here? I have no idea what's going on, and I never got back into it. So I think that was one of the worst things that they ever did.
Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored, live from New York. Ben Shapiro still with me, so we've got to get to them. Harry and Meghan, unfortunately. Let's take a little look at South Park, just because it makes me howl with laughter every time I look at it.
All right, let's see.
It has been several months now since our beloved Queen has died. Our Canadians are finding it hard to go on. All Canadians, that is, except for our first guest, the Prince and his wife. We want privacy. We want privacy. Thanks for having us on the show.
In a way, these two absolutely personify woke culture, don't they? The entitlement, the virtue signaling, the hypocrisy, all of it is in
Being part of the royal family, and then be like, nah, that's not good enough.
encapsulated in these two.
And the untouchability.
Right.
You found out, right? If you say something that crosses them and you hurt their feelings, then they're very upset.
And they believe they have a right to get people removed from their jobs if they don't agree with everything they're saying.
Well, don't they? Isn't that how monarchy works? I mean, I know I'm being pedantic because they don't really operate like that, but
I will say,
Even if they're lying.
I think the public reaction to them is so heartening because they really are quite terrible. I mean, I'm watching this as an American. I have no dog in this particular fight, but I gotta say, they're just the worst. I mean, I actually read Prince Harry's awful memoir, and the number of things that are obviously not true, and the absolute self-delusion and arrogant self-delusion with
And
which
the
he
amount
addresses
of
these things.
intrusion into his own family's life, quoting family members from funerals and stuff, far more intrusive than anything any tabloids
He wants
ever done.
privacy, but he has very specific memories of using particular facial cream on. I didn't know we're taught.
I don't pay attention to this. Do you guys pay attention to this stuff? Like, oh, I'm gonna make that a poll. You guys don't know this poll. Yeah. Do you guys pay attention to the royal family stuff? Like, I mean, I don't see that as I don't get why Americans are entertained by that. Hey, we got Darshawn McAway in the building. What is good? What is good? Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Awesome YouTuber. Just dropped the link in the chat here. Please go check him out. Awesome, awesome YouTuber and all around great dude. Welcome to the party. We are checking out Ben Shapiro on Piers Morgan.
I mean, I'm American. We don't use the word Dodger in my country, so I have no idea what. I mean, now I know, but you know.
Wait, did I miss it? What's a Dodger? Other than like LA Dodgers.
Far more intrusive than anything.
He wants privacy, but he has very specific memories of using particular facial cream on. I didn't know the word. I mean, I'm American. We don't use the word Dodger in my country, so I have no idea what. I mean, now I know, but you know, you learn something every day.
What happens to them now? I mean, they've done all this stuff for Netflix, but it's all basically their entire value is predicated on trashing the family and the monarchy. That's a diminishing returns, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a next step here. I mean, once you actually destroy your source of value, which is the inside view of the monarchy, and you've already spilled that, what else is there to do other than stand outside and just shout a lot, and then, as South Park implies, seek privacy?
Well, don't they have a podcast? Like, people will listen to anything. Just because they have a name that people recognize, and they've had experiences that other people will never experience, they can just, talk and say nothing, and people will eat it up. Harley said, I don't care about them until they do something bad, like certain member being exposed for being in a trafficking ring. Good point. Good point. That I care about. The royal weddings, all that stuff. I mean, even the royal funeral, unfortunately, I'm sorry. I just didn't care.
I mean, is there any love for them here or not?
I mean, I can't. I'm searching for it.
Is it now ridicule?
Yeah, I think it's all ridicule at this point.
I want to talk about Chat GPT, which I don't know much about, other than it's a bit worrying when we asked
Chat GPT, love that ish,
them to write a tweet in my style. And they came back with, I'm tired of these PC snowflakes trying to dictate what I can and can't say. Freedom of speech is under attack. #wake up, which was pretty damn accurate. So I interviewed Professor Stephen Hawking before he died. Last TV interview he ever gave. An amazing day with him up in Cambridge.
Real quick, guys, I have a question. Especially if you're not familiar with ChatGPT, but just in general, would you be interested in, if just as a show, maybe a Friday show, where we just play around with ChatGPT? I'll just open it up, and we'll try to see what kind of weird stuff we can get it to say, all that kind of stuff. I've seen other people, especially using the jailbreak commands where you can get around the limitations, and they're fun. They're not like super exciting, but it's just like, oh, well, we can do this. Oh, we can do that, and then someone will say, oh, you should add that. I don't know. It was fun. Just let me know if you guys would be interested in that.
I said, what's the biggest threat to mankind? He said, when AI learns to self-design, that's it. Are we getting anywhere near now?
Yep.
It certainly feels like we are approaching it. And this would just be the latest iteration of us unleashing forces that we have no idea the consequences. Right. What those
Should
consequences
we be unleashing them?
Kind of like in Wuhan, right?
I have some serious doubts about whether we should be unleashing them, at least in this sort of uncontrolled fashion that we're seeing right now. I'm not sure the government is capable of controlling any of this sort of stuff. The thing, honestly, that I'm most worried about is when you combine the rise of internet pornography with the rise of ChatGPT, which is going to, I think, play on the emotions of people using the internet. I mean, we could be one generation away from human extinction at this point. I mean, if you look at the actual rates of propagation in the West and you look at the rates of dating and the rates of marriage, like all that stuff is taking a mass dive. And yeah, I'm pretty worried about that.
That seems a little bit extremist. That seems a little bit reactionary, but I don't know. He says, I think ChatGPT can be a great tool, but it's also a very scary thing. I'm sure if we, I'm going to assume you're not sure if we should even be using it. Well, I don't disagree, but certainly while not everybody is writing their descriptions with what are the most popular words for this, then, hey, I'm going to be using it for sure. Our son says, maybe a good idea. I haven't looked into that software yet. Bro. It's so, it's just free. You just go to the website and it starts working. It's awesome. It's awesome. And like I said, we could do a whole show and just be like, what if you say this? And be like, okay, let's type that. Like, oh, it did it. That could be fun. Could be fun.
So apart from the imminent end of the entire planet, Ben Shapiro, is there anything positive you can give us?
Well, I mean, the good news is that
When you think about the world, what do you feel good about?
my good news is twofold. One is that the era of Anglo-American dominance is not yet over. Right? What we're seeing in Ukraine is actually rather heartening because it suggests that the post-World War II system is not yet dead. So that's a good thing.
Is it though? Is it though? Because I don't know if this is a good situation. Maybe you know, you're talking about the post-World War system being a good thing, but if this is where it's leading us to World War III, then maybe that's not an ideal situation. Just saying. All right, we got the cosign from Harley Friday show. If you are interested, 8 p.m. Eastern, we are going to be playing with ChatGPT, and we're going to jailbreak it. We're going to get all these fun stuff. I'm going to look up exactly how to do all that stuff and have it ready so that we're going to come in and just have some fun.
And the other thing that I think that is good is that I root for reality. Reality always wins. And so all of these kind of forces that we've unleashed, they are running up directly against the rocks of reality, and there will be consequences.
Do you feel the woke worm is turning? Because I do. I feel that the backlash against wokery is now real. And
that's exactly what I wanted to highlight. The backlash against wokery or wokeness is bubbling up. It's finally bubbling up. And that's why I'm I wouldn't necessarily say optimistic, but if I had to answer the question, do I think we are going to continue moving in this direction forever, or are we very quickly approaching a point that you know, we're just going to hit that drop off where everyone's like, all right, that's too far. You've gone too far. Hey, we got Mansa in the building. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Yes, exactly. We're gonna put the do anything now. There's more though. That allows you some to get around some stuff, but there's people who have been, you know, it gets crazy. Trust me. Show up Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. But welcome to the party, Mansa. Glad you're here. We're just finishing up the interview with Ben Shapiro and Piers Morgan.
People have basically now said enough.
I think that's right. And I think what's even more heartening is that the people who are pushing it don't realize that yet.
Right.
So they're going to continue to push.
That's a great point. That's a great point. The people who are pushing wokeness don't yet realize that a lot of people are starting to wake up, pun intended. The fact that they've had such heavy control over culture for so long, they're seeing that, you know, people are speaking out, but that's always been the case. But before, those people were just canceled like that. And now we have Piers Morgan talking to Ben Shapiro about how getting rid of wokeness is the right thing. So I would be worried if I was pushing wokeness. He says, the thing I'm worried about is the pendulum. If it has swung this far left, then how far right will it swing when it comes back? Very, very interesting and scary question. But hopefully this is the, you know, to use the pendulum swinging. Hopefully this is not well, it isn't the first push. But, you know, with a real pendulum, the first push is going to go so far. But then even that next swing is going to be less. And then next swing is going to be less and less and less and less and less. That's a real pendulum. So I don't, you know, when we use that analogy or metaphor or whatever you want to call it in politics, it doesn't necessarily apply to the physics of an actual pendulum. But I do think that aspect of, you know, it you know, swinging and finding a homeostasis, so to speak, is the general direction. So yes, the pendulum can swing too far right. But if we think about the idea that the pendulum has already been too far right in recent modern history with the religious right in the 90s, and, you know, it went to the left with the 60s, and then we had the religious right, and now we have the woke left, and hopefully we're going to settle on something and realize, like, okay, if we're just going to push for our ideas for by any means necessary and you know, go full bore, it's not going to work out for us. And then it's just going to embolden the people to fight back when the time comes. I'm hoping. I don't know how confident I am in that, but that's what I'm hoping for.
Right into the teeth of the resistance. And when
let's back that up. Yeah, but he's saying that the backlash, they're not quite feeling it yet.
Is now real, and people have basically now said enough.
I think that's right, and I think what's even more heartening is that the people who are pushing it don't realize that yet.
Right.
So they're going to continue to push right into the teeth of the resistance, and when the jaws clamp shut, it's going to get very ugly for them, I think.
You've made a business now which is generating hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. Extraordinary story, really. Probably all down to the way you tuned me up on CNN all those years ago. Things have worked out quite well for me too. So happy days for both of us. But it's an amazing business. Why do you think you've resonated so hugely, not just in America, but around the world?
Again, I think that the central brand, which
That's an interesting question. Why do you think? Why do you think Ben Shapiro has been so? I was looking for a better word than popular, but popular.
is that we are very honest about where we are coming from. So we're honest about our own political biases, but we're also trying to be as factual as humanly possible. And we do provide a wide variety of views. I mean, all of our hosts disagree with one another. Candace disagrees with me, disagrees with Matt,
I think
disagrees
that's
with
the
Jordan.
power of your brand. I really do. I think and that's what I try to inspire to be myself. You've got to be fair-minded about it, right?
I mean, hopefully, if you're opening up that conversation, then people are going to learn more than they came in with.
I think today they will.
So that is Ben Shapiro with Piers Morgan, and we see that it's a very different style than hosting his own show that's supposed to be the Sunday special with somebody that he completely disagrees with. This conversation got more heated than the conversation with Anna Kasparian, and so that brings a good parallel of, do we always want to watch people fighting, or is there times when it's better to see people who generally agree but have smaller disagreements so we can actually get into the weeds on those specific smaller issues? Because if you're talking about, somebody on the far left and the far right, then you're just going to, you're not going to get anywhere. Not that you shouldn't have those conversations, not that you should avoid those conversations, but there's a different purpose when you're speaking with somebody who just completely doesn't understand or disagrees with your perspective versus when you are getting into the weeds with someone who generally has a similar worldview but disagrees on a specific point. So I think after everything that has happened, the Dems are going to be destroyed. Nobody trusts them, and the destruction they caused will take years to recover. We may not see a Democratic leader for years. I hope so. I hope so. It's crazy that we got here. I could never, ever, as my 15, 17, 20-year-old self, think that I would have a show about politics, and I'm a registered Republican. I registered on my at the end of the year when I got my new license. I never thought I'd be here. Life is a crazy journey. But I think, it's just a matter of, a lot of what they were talking about is what I've been saying since I started shifting away from the mainstream narrative, the mainstream left-wing narrative. That it's not that my ideas, I'm suddenly changing all my ideas and now aligning with people I didn't align with before. The ideas that I had, by and large, were the same. It's just that what camp you belong in, having those ideas changed. And I'm me. So if being me is what people are calling conservative, all right, I mean, I guess I'm conservative. And so I would just say to you guys that don't be afraid of these labels. Understand what's behind them, especially because of all the semantic obfuscation and people just using words however they want. Understand what it is that you want to happen in the world, and that will dictate, what label, what people, what all of that stuff. If you focus on the label, then the label can lead all of you in the wrong direction, which I would say it has with the far left. So just worry about the values and the ideas that you care about. And if you do that, then whatever group or party or tribe or whatever you're in, you're naturally going to be more effective because you genuinely care about the actual things rather than being part of the group. So with that, I don't know better note to end on than that. I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. A big thank you to Divining Rod and the Uncle Junior Network for sponsoring this stream. Really appreciate you guys and each and every one of you for stopping by, hanging out with me. You guys know how much I love it, and I love you with all my heart. You guys make me, just well up inside because you just... I love it. But really, I do appreciate you guys. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this party. Once again, I am your host, Lutch, a.k.a. the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Until next time, remember, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. And I've been dropping videos short videos every single day. I'm saying 6 days a week, but I'm trying to do every single day. So make sure you check the community tab, you check your subscriptions, and check those out as well. I've been getting better. So check those out. Thank you again, guys. Until next time, I am out of here. Peace.